Hello and welcome to the 39th episode of Damage Control Podcasting, a professionally unprofessional look at the conventions, ideas, and genres of filmmaking. I'm here with
Daniel Newkirk.
Alright, so it's Steampunk weekend, it's 5th annual Big River Steampunk.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Me and Daniel are heading down there. This is pretend, Daniel, that we haven't already. A little peek behind the curtain, we've already been down there. All the interviews are done. We did a video package, but we're going to pretend, Daniel. So we're getting ready to head down there.
Oh, I'm so excited.
Me too.
I will totally not leave the equipment in Quincy this time when I come down to Hannibal.
Yes. What are you looking forward to?
I'm really looking forward to both of the burlesque shows that I have tickets for.
Right.
As well as really looking forward to seeing the Metamorphosis transformation by Judas and Magnolia. And the mind reading and the both of those are on my list of things to do, as well as the Steampunk Film Festival.
Yes.
Yeah. Spoiler alert: I missed 2 of those 3 because we were working.
Yes. So we've got videos. Well, we did do a video, or we are going to do a video.
Oh.
We haven't done it yet, or maybe we have.
This is like a time traveler episode.
Yeah.
Perfect for steampunk.
Yes, and I'm already confusing myself. So check out our YouTube channel for the videos that we will put up. We did some interviews. We're going to do interviews with the Little Beard and ScallyWags.
Yep, absolutely. They're a pirate-themed comedy troupe, or as they say in the interview, a comedy-themed pirate troupe.
Just Judas and Magnolia.
Yes, fantastic magicians and escape artists. We talk about their 3 brand new shows they crafted this year.
We're going to talk about it.
We are going to talk about the 3 new shows they crafted this year.
And then, as a spoiler warning, we will be trolled by a child, so there'll be a weird edit point. Because I think... Okay, the veil's over.
Your clairvoyance is really rocking hard on this one.
The veil's over. So the Steampunk weekend's over. We got the interviews. So we apologize every time we hit record for an interview. The gentleman who was very good at playing piano, very very good at playing piano, but he decided to play piano every time we recorded. And we wanted to get the performers out of the really hot sun, so our choices were very limited. And Java Jive was very nice to let us record.
Oh, absolutely. They were fantastic hosts with their air conditioning and the fine drinks. If you're in downtown Hannibal, check out the Java Jive. They are a fantastic place to be.
Yes. So just hang in there on the interviews. I've already listened to them. They're not bad, but the piano... you will hear the piano in the background. We have a couple children who wanted to troll us in our interviews. Can't help that. So first up, the first interview up will be...
the first interview we had was Eva La Feva with special guest Sio Bast.
Yes.
2 beautiful women who take place... words. It's been a long weekend, guys.
Yes.
The 2 lovely women who take part in the burlesque shows on Saturday and Sunday. I got to see both of them perform on both days, and they did such a magnificent job.
Then followed by an interview with Amy Wilder.
Yes, the gorgeous Amy Wilder, who also performed at both burlesque shows, and a professional nude model. So we get to talk to her about kind of her modeling career and her position on nudity in movies.
And she was very nice. We grabbed her right after a class, or not a class.
Panel.
A panel she was doing, so we gave her no time to catch her breath. So
no time. It was pick her up and run her to the Jive.
Yeah, so we appreciate her doing that. And then the ScallyWags after that.
Yeah, absolutely hilarious. We could sit back and talk to them for hours without saying a word, and they were fantastic. We also caught them just they were finishing the show. Funny, they actually thought I was the guy locking up the theater at first. And I'm like, no, we've got plans. He's like, oh, right, the podcast. And they immediately canceled what they were doing to come do the podcast, which was so amazing of them. and they were fantastic guests. Absolutely hilarious. Make sure you listen to that one.
And then finally, the last interview of the night was Judas and Magnolia.
Yes, Judas and Magnolia. We got the chance to talk to them about the history of magic, as well as a little bit of who they are, and their 3 new amazing tricks they get to do.
I felt bad because I just wanted to keep asking Judas about history of magic. And it was like getting really late.
Yeah, we were really pushing the time restraints, and you could tell that they were pretty exhausted after the weekend, and they were so great to talk to.
Yeah, very nice. They didn't. But so in the Judas and Magnolia interview, you'll hear an odd edit because we had a child that was trolling us.
Oh yeah, he was trolling us pretty hard. We powered through the other one, but that one we actually had to stop. And
So I'm being forced to edit, so we will jump to the first interview.
Yeah. All right, and welcome back from Adam's Skippy Jump Cut edit. We are here with Eva La Feva and Sio Bast at the Big River Steampunk Festival. SioBast. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
So, not like CeeLo Green. There we go.
No.
SioBast. All right, I apologize.
Oh, it's fine.
We're starting off that professional just right. All right, so you better. All right. So Eva La Feva and Sio Bast, you girls, we saw you at the show last night, which was the burlesque show. Which was always a masterpiece. I was there last year, loved it. Loved it this year. I can't say enough good things about both of your girls' performances. How did you guys get started with the burlesque dance, and how did you guys kind of get into that?
Well, I came from a belly dance background, so I started off, and I've been belly dancing for over a decade, and then a lot of times in a lot of cities it's difficult to work as a belly dancer unless you're working in like an Arabic nightclub or something and make decent money. A lot of belly dancers have kind of gone into performing in variety shows, so I started performing in St. Louis with Lola Vanilla, and that's where I met Sammy Tramp as well. They were producing a show at the time called The Beggars Carnival. I started doing belly dance inspired burlesque acts that kind of fused, and then slowly over time it just kind of morphed into more burlesque. Just because I think in burlesque you got a lot more creative freedom, and you can, there's not a lot of rules. Like, belly dance, you're reflecting a culture, so obviously you want to be mindful about how you present yourself in your stories and your acts and things of that nature. So I think burlesque is really freeing because you can do a lot with it. You can be like, I'm going to be a sexy fox, and if you do it well, it's fun. You do it well, you can get away with it.
Right on.
I come from a Latin dance background, focusing mainly on salsa. And I did that for about 7 years, and I had a pretty amazing partner at the time, but we sort of had creative differences, and great. This is amazing. Starting off amazing. You guys don't know what happened, but we know. Anyway, it just started to get to the point where I had these ideas, and I felt like I didn't have freedom, like Eva mentioned, to do things I wanted to do, so I wanted to find something where it was more like a solo situation. I could pick my music, I could pick my costuming, and oh my god!
Sorry, for those of you listening at home, we're being attacked by a fly who just loves these two ladies.
She's flying around us like crazy. I'm scared I'm going to swallow it. Anyway, I just wanted to have a little more control over what I did in my acts and choreography. And a friend of mine invited me to a show, and it was a burlesque show. And I thought, whoa, I could totally get into this. This is so cool. And then the rest is history. That show.
And Sio brings up such a great point that burlesque dancers, we're our own promoters, we're on music editors, we're on costumers, our own hair and makeup, so when you're in like a play or something, you're interpreting someone else's character and someone else's part, but burlesque, you're calling all the shots, and you can create
your brand.
From start to finish, exactly the energy and the look that you want to bring to the table, which is really cool and powerful and freeing.
Yeah.
Same words over and over.
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
Since you guys build your own costume and stuff, are you guys kind of like a close-knit community where you guys help each other out? Because you may go into the world of burlesque service, designing costumes? You guys kind of help each other.
Yeah, I think a lot of people bring things from their past that they know, so I used to sew as a kid, so I do a lot of sewing in my costumes. I used to belly dance, so I end up using a lot of those similar movements in burlesque. I think you tend to kind of carry stuff from your past and your training.
Yeah.
Because you don't have to be a costumer. You don't have to be a dancer even to be a burlesque performer. Again, you just have to execute an idea well, so, and there's a lot of crossover and a lot of people that do have expertise offer their skills to the community, which I think is really wonderful. It's very inclusive.
Yeah, like if somebody's particularly good at sewing, then sometimes they have like a little side business helping other people so that maybe can't make, like for instance, I can sew by hand, but I don't know how to use a machine. So a lot of my costumes are what I like to call like a Frankenstein effect. I will go to a store, whether it's a vintage shop or a dress that really caught my eye, or something that's on sale that I'm like, oh, I could rip this apart and make something completely new. But I don't have to start from scratch. But if you do want to do that, then you have so many other people that like, oh, I'm a seamstress, like, that's what I've been doing my whole life, and I also happen to do burlesque. And so it can't cross over like that, sort of like, trading services and stuff like that. So yes, in some aspects, I suppose it can't be like that.
Great. I feel like the people at home may not quite understand the difference between burlesque and exotic dance. I feel like they kind of synonymize the two together, and I know there's a difference. Adam, I think, knows there's a difference. But I remember when I went to my first show, asking my girlfriend if I could go, and she's like, "Oh, well, I don't know. You're just going to go see strippers." Like, no, it's completely different. As professional burlesque dancers, what's the main difference that you would tell the people at home between, your exotic dancers at a club and what you guys do as art?
Honestly, I think that a lot of it is just the economic structure of how the art forms are put together. So in burlesque, we're hired to do an event. Our pay is set. We know that we're going to walk out the door with a certain amount. I mean, all shows are kind of structured differently in terms of pay, but essentially, if I get on stage and I don't want to do my I don't want to do my act, I can leave and just look at me. Whereas the strip clubs, it's customer service, so essentially, they're trying to, and people don't realize, I think, how hard strippers work, and I think that it's culturally something where people want to be like, oh yes, strippers, and make them the butt of a joke, but honestly, I feel like the strippers that I know are incredibly hardworking because they have to work much longer hours than burlesque dancers. They have to rent their space on stage to do their pole dances, and then they have to make that money back throughout the night. So it's a lot of people don't realize that strippers they're hustling to get money because that's how they earn their income, and it's the economic structure of burlesque is traditionally much different. And I think when you're approaching it from a customer service mindset, your physicality changes where, a lot of burlesque is you go into it wanting to, with your set act that you choreograph, that it doesn't matter who's in the audience, the act is probably going to be
what it is.
Pretty similar regardless of the environment in the particular venue.
You tweak things here and there, but yes. There's a set idea. And sorry, go ahead, I didn't mean to.
No, I was good.
Just in strip clubs, it's just something I think it's a little more, what's the right word I'm looking for? I guess not as strict, you can, and not that burlesque is strict, it's just that they have a little more, like Eva said, it's customer service, so it comes from a different perspective, it's not necessarily good or bad, it's just different is all it is. And not to mention that it takes real talent to be a stripper, and I don't mean talent pretty or dancey or anything like that. I mean you have to be strong. I'm you guys are gymnasts. I tried to do a pole dance once and I was like, Jesus Christ, this is I felt like my arms were gonna rip off. So that's a big difference between
And strippers that I know that I've talked to have told me that so much of the job is a lot of strippers that I've met have told me how difficult the job is from just interacting with people. A lot of times they're when I get into the back room with a client, all they want to talk about is how they're having problems processing the death of their father or something. They're it's such a large part of it is just essentially being like providing companionship in a most basic sense
Emotional,
to people.
yeah.
And I think that, again,
And burlesque performers were just like...
And with burlesque performance, it's much less, again, like, I think the only word I can think to describe it is really like customer service, you know, like...
Okay, so kind of like the difference between like a scripted performance and an improvisational performance.
Oh my god, I just thought of one. Because it's like more theatrics, right? It would be like maybe comparing going to a place where it's like, you go to a restaurant and you have a server, right? Versus, what's the word I'm looking for? What Jeff and I do with the cat. Coordinated service.
Okay.
Do you know, they both sort of stem from the same branch, but one is more coordinated and there's a lot more things going on, while the other one is more individual, kind of case by case. I don't know if that makes sense, but...
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
That would be like, I don't know.
So going back to the to what you guys do, can you walk us through when you're ready to make a new routine? What's kind of your creative process to creating the story behind what you're doing?
I think everyone's creative process is different, but so I think some people start with the costume and build their actor on that. Some people do. I tend to find music that moves me first, and then create the actor on that. Or sometimes I have a larger conceptual idea, like my hula doll act, which I performed here 2 years ago. It's a dashboard hula doll that keeps dancing to the radio station, changing channels. And that act came about because I had hurt my foot and I couldn't really dance around, and so I was like, I'm gonna do an act where I'm standing in place on a podium, and at the same time, an old boss of mine had given me an old hula costume, and was like, I know you dance, maybe you can do something with this. So it's like, sometimes things just come together weirdly, organically, where you kind of are given pieces, and you're like, well, I guess this is happening. And then other times, you set out with an idea, like, I want to create an act that has this focus. But a lot of my inspiration starts with music, and then kind of works from there. That's me personally. I don't know.
I agree 100% with everything you said, and it is different, and you just never know when the muses are going to strike, like, sometimes it's a color, sometimes it's a show, or a hairstyle. Like, I made a whole act, the feather fan dance I did that entire act based on this flapper headpiece that I got at a gig I did with Angela Eve. And it was the colors, I loved it, and funny enough, I don't even use the piece anymore. The act went off on its own thing, and I'm like, you know what? I don't like this headpiece anymore, the thing that, like, brought the whole thing together. So yeah, I agree with 100%.
You guys talked about using music. Is there, as far as using music, are you guys allowed to use whatever music you want, or is there, like, legal restrictions?
From a strictly legal perspective, technically we should probably have a BMI license to dance to music that's owned by...
I think you can also buy it too. Like, if you buy it, there's a few
I think
things that come with that.
And a lot of the venues that we perform in have music licensing to play music. So, like, the BMI license is basically a license that you can play, like, music on a jukebox in your bar. So... But a lot of it, honestly, with burlesque is, like, a lot of times there are rules in place. Like, there are rules about nudity and how much nudity you can show in a place that's serving liquor, and, like, and some of the rules are actually kind of, you look at the nudity laws, are pretty, like, antiquated. It's like, in Nashville, for instance, you can't show the bottom half of your breast below the areola, and you can't show your for lack of a more delicate phrase, butt crack. And 2 inches of either side of your butt crack. And you're just like, who went and set this rule? Like, who made this and was like, butt crack is really
the butt cheeks are fine, but you see any of that butt crack?
I want to be the guy who has to enforce that law. Just hold on, here's my measuring tape. You're fine.
Well, that's interesting that you bring that up, because really I think that's what it is. It's like all of these laws, and it's really, some areas there's somebody there that is enforcing that, or they get public pressure, and so then all of a sudden things like music licensing or like nudity, it becomes a much bigger deal. But for the most part, honestly, and as much as I hate to say this, we're not really making enough money for anybody to come after us. You know what I mean? If we were like multi-million-dollar, I think that might be a different story, but since it's kind of underground, and I think it's less of an issue. But,
yeah.
Absolutely, that makes sense.
Going back to your creative process, you talked about how you start when you're creating, as far as, I'm wide open. Do you have, when you work on your dance, do you have a 3-act structure? Do you dance, or is it just, or do you not think of it in terms of beginning, middle, and end type?
Oh no, I think the best burlesque acts have this feeling of everything kind of being like wrapped up perfectly with the bow, like all of your X's and T's crossed and your I's dotted and everything. Like I think people really respond to like patterns and you revisiting things throughout the act or like coming up to certain like, you know, there's principles like the rule of threes, which is something in comedy where you do something 3 times and it's funny. Like a lot of like those sort of elements you definitely make their way into burlesque and especially the physical theater acts, I think, tend to be very structured. And when I choreograph, honestly, a lot of times I kind of start from a global perspective. I listen to my music a lot. I get really familiarized. I learn every beat and every tick. And then I kind of go and make an overall, okay, this verse, I'm going to take up this piece of clothing, this verse, and kind of approach it from like a bird's eye view coming down onto the act as opposed to choreographing
from beginning to end. I can't do if I the times I've tried to start from beginning to end, I drive myself crazy and I feel blocked. All of a sudden I can't. But if I just like let it go and I'm like, no, I think in this part I know I want to take the bra off, and in this part I'm going to do the glove, and then just sort of let the middle fill itself out as you go and you're feeling things out.
I'm so jealous of that. When I'm writing, I'll have the middle in, but if I don't have the next dialogue written, I can't just go, I'll work on that later. I would stick on that dialogue for like 2 months until I figured it out. I'm very jealous of that you guys really did. It drives me.
I mean, it took a lot of trial and error for me to finally get to that point. I think it was just like, why am I not growing? Why am I so stuck? Why do I feel parked? And I'm like, well, I'm not even allowing myself to be creative. I'm just like, it has to be this way. And I'm like, why? Why does it have to be that? Like, that's just crazy.
And within, well, like you said, you don't use that headpiece anymore. Do you find, like, musicians, they'll play the same song 50 times and then they'll decide to play a solo different? Do you guys kind of, like, start falling asleep after a while because you're doing the same dance?
Like everything, it gets old after a minute.
Yeah, but a lot of my acts, like, the 100th time I've done it, all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I could do this way. Like, that's the cool thing I think about what we do is, like, there's never, I feel like there's very few things that are ever like completely done. It's not changing a beat.
Right, there's always room to grow.
You can always modify it slightly, make those little tweaks, and kind of like, you know, figure out.
So is that one thing, man? Like, I'm very jealous of people like you guys, stand-up comics, anyone that goes up on stage, like basically, for you guys literally, but basically exposing. To me, I would be in a corner peeing on myself. So I'm very jealous of the way you guys do that. So is that something that draws you back to be able to show your art and then be like, I want to do this tonight? Is that something that keeps you coming back, or is it just what keeps bringing you back to the stage?
Yeah, I mean, I work full time as a burlesque performer and a teacher and a producer. So I produce events, and it can get really repetitive and it doesn't always feel like fun. A lot of times it feels like going to work because it is.
Well, it is work.
Yeah. So, but I think, you know, like, changing it up can be fun when it works. You know, sometimes you try something and you're like, well, that sucked. But you're still learning something.
Yeah.
You know? So I think it's all productive and it's all like working towards a bigger thing. For me, what keeps me coming back is like that connection with the audience. Like really, especially a place like Hannibal, people are so incredibly thoughtful here and are so invested in what we're doing. It's really wonderful that they'll come up and they'll remember our acts from previous years. And
I know that I'm like, oh, you remember me? That's so cool. Thank you. Like, I appreciate that so much.
Yeah, and you would think for like being a burlesque dancer that you just are gonna get skeevy guys coming up to you being like, nice tits, honey, but it's not.
Oh no, that is not welcome for me.
It's people coming up and being like, wow, I really connected with this thing that you did, or like I really find this powerful, I'm really inspired, and like that sort of thing is really humbling and really fulfilling, I think, to know that like it's not just screaming into the void, like people are actually like, no, I got that, I liked it, and you're like, yay.
Another thing for me, I think also that brings me back is that there's a bit of excitement and there's like I get exhilarated and a bit of a rush, especially just before a show, because I always get so nervous. Like if you ever go backstage, I'm like sweating. I'm always trying to act cool because I learned a while ago that, you know, if you're very nervous and whatever energy you bring backstage, it affects others. So I'm always trying to act like I'm cool, but I'm losing my mind on the inside. I mean, it's just complete chaos. And then I get on stage, and whatever happens, happens because it's live entertainment. And when you have something that you feel happy with, or you connect with the audience in a certain situation. Like last night actually was one of those nights for me. I walked off stage and I was like, I just want to feel that a million times over. Like that feeling of like people being just so engaged and cheering and hooing, and I'm just like, yeah, we're all here enjoying this together. That always brings me back. I remind myself that every time I'm like, I'm gonna quit, and I'm like, no, I'm not. I love that attention. I want it.
Yeah, it's really an exercise about really inhabiting the present moment. Because when you're on stage, you can overthink it, but it's going to lead to a really over thought out performance. Yeah. And sometimes I can see it when someone's on stage and they're like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4.
Oh yes, I was guilty of that at the beginning.
And then you see people that are just really losing themselves in the music and really channeling something greater than themselves. Not to overstate it, but I mean I've seen performances where you're like, I don't think that person's human. Like I think that they just did something that was.
That's what I felt about your doll act last night. I was like, oh my god, get the hell out of here. Fuck out of here, because I can say it. Woo!
Yeah, I 100% agree. The act that you did last night was incredibly powerful. Now, last year, I looked for both of you and a couple of the other dancers on social media, and I found you on YouTube. And every time you bring up something new, I always make sure to watch it. All of your videos, every time, and this is going to sound funny, but every time that I see you, I need to find a picture of you to make sure it's you. Because you are so different every single time I see you. Either be like now, from yesterday when you're in the steampunk garb, and then the doll costume, and then last year you did this 1950s wife costume.
The whipped cream one?
The whipped cream one, and then like you did another zombie performance. And the transformations that you can make when you're transitioning from character to character are absolutely incredible. How do you do that?
Well, I think I think generally as a human being, I tend to be a little, maybe too much. I'm a very expressive person by nature, so I think that people are always like, how do you make those faces? And I'm like, I don't even realize I'm making faces.
Oh my god, your facial expression.
I also have larger features, so I think sometimes they just read, I think some people make big faces, but I don't know. Anyway, I think there's a lot there, but I think, I did theater as a kid, and I really liked that idea. And the burlesque that I was really attracted to, the things that really brought me into burlesque were the acts where I felt like there were stories and there were people that you could identify with, because being a professional burlesque dancer in Chicago, a lot of the venues want you to just be sparkly, fancy lady time, strutting around being like, look at me sparkle, which is fine, and a lot of people do that really well, and I enjoy doing that too. But to me, there's so many images and there's so many representations of perfection and beauty and flawlessness and stuff that it gets a little boring for me, honestly. Even the classic burlesque dances that I find myself really attracted to, the people are really infusing it with character, even if it's still that stereotypical burlesque feel. So they're very they're playing with their audience, and you feel like you know them at the end of the show. That's always
you've shared that moment together, there's a connection.
You're like, I bet if I talked to that person, I would know what they were like. You know what I mean? Like that.
I absolutely can understand that, because one of the reasons why we reached out to you is I did have that really strong connection to your performances in the last year, and then all the connection through internet. There was connection through the YouTube videos, and I'm like, she's a person I want to talk to.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
So you said that one of the many things that you do is you teach classes. If there are people looking to get into this style of dance, what's some of the biggest advice you can give them?
Well, we actually, Sio and I worked really hard to try to bring some workshops this year to Hannibal, actually, because we thought that the educational component, and especially the energy here, we thought it would be a really good fit, because I think it's always important to keep learning and to keep growing and to keep, even if you're a professional, you're never not a student, you know what I mean? You're you're a lifetime student, I think. And I think, definitely it's always great if you can find someone that's teaching classes in your area and attend and have somebody watch your form and give notes and give critique. Not everyone has that luxury. I don't believe I know of any instructors in Hannibal particularly. But I think.
But it doesn't necessarily just have to be there's burlesque isn't one one specific dance. You know what I mean? So I guess one of the things would be you could learn any type of dance and then incorporate burlesque into that, or any theater, comedy. You can, I mean,
That's very true.
Eva's a very great representation of that. Like, you can take anything and incorporate burlesque into it, and if you do it right, you're gonna nail it, you know? Like, but sorry, I didn't.
No, I think that's a great note. That just any sort of, it doesn't have to be burlesque. It can be theater. It can be dance. It can be partner dancing. So all of that is going to give you that idea of like what it is to put things on like just exercise that performance muscle. I think. There's also a lot of events like this is like a steampunk convention. Like there's a lot of burlesque events. So there's a great event in Seattle called BurleCon. That's all instructional classes and things of that nature. And I think too, just like really studying like anything that you love. Like if you're a writer, you read a lot of books by a lot of different authors, and you look online and you watch. I mean, I guess you can't really watch videos for writing, but like in burlesque, like watching a lot of videos and like really asking yourself, what am I connecting to in this performance? What do I like? What don't I like? Because I think the one thing about burlesque that I will say is like it doesn't serve anybody to try to pretend to be anybody else or try to be a character that you're not, or granted I'm not a broken doll, but like for me that act was a lot like the original incarnation of that act was about kind of like trying to come to terms with aging and getting older and feeling like you're falling apart a little bit and stuff. And so, that was something that I could relate to, and I tried to bring that into that performance, even though I've never spent time as a broken doll, but
But it makes sense though, because it's true that like making amends with the broken parts of who you are inside. At least knowing you personally, I'm like, I mean, we don't have to be literal about it, but I just mean like the parts of you, and accepting that it reads in your act. Like when you put your eye back in and that makes you happy and it falls back out and you're like, whatever, then I'm just gonna dance around with my eye out. Like, it's still okay. It's very telling of your personality.
I heard there's a Ben Folds song, and it's called I Do the Best Imitation of Myself, and I always think with art, like, don't try to be somebody else, like, be you, because, like, you're never going to be a better version, like, I'm never going to be a better SioBast than SioBast, like, SioBast
and vice versa.
At being her, like, in her style, like, if I went out and tried to do some, like, Latin number, like, if people would, I think it wouldn't read as something that was genuine to me. I think people really connect with people being honest in any art form.
Yeah.
Honesty is really, that's when people come up to you and they're like, I got what you mean, I picked up what you were throwing down, I was connected to this, and I was really inspired. Like, that's where that comes from, is people recognizing truth on stage. Soapbox off.
Okay, great. So traditionally, for those listening at home, we focus primarily on cinema and both films, TV shows, as well as other different types of writing for different mediums. And one of the things that we've kind of gone back and forth on in the podcast in different episodes is nudity in cinema. And I would like to get your ladies' opinions, because we kind of go back and forth where honestly about 20% of us being like, yeah, there should be a nude scene in this movie is because, hey, she's hot. And that number goes up a little bit more when Cody's on the podcast. But about 80% of the time, we're looking at the artistic vision of the director and how that kind of looks at what he wants to put forward. And I would love to know what your ladies' opinions are on that kind of thing. Because there seems to be two camps. That one's the artistic vision of the director, and two, where maybe they can rewrite the script where that's not necessary to the art.
Yeah, I think, well, and cinema is interesting because I know that there was a lot of, and I'm not sure particularly about legislation, but I know that like there was laws about like how you could depict certain things in movies back in the day. Like, a criminal could never get away with a crime, like they always had to be convicted and stuff. And so I'm sure
couple had to be in separate beds.
Yeah, exactly. Like there was just unconscious things, and my partner is a really big movie buff, and he's got a Filmstruck subscription. I don't know if you guys have Filmstruck, but if you don't have it, you should check it out. It's like an old movie online streaming service. Filmstruck, yeah. And it's interesting. I recently produced a show that was based off of kind of film noir style movies. So we have a live band, and we did kind of like all of the dialogue was very like it was hotter than outside, and so we watched a ton of movies, and what I found was interesting is sometimes I think when you are limited where you can't show nudity, and I'm not sure what movies that might have been a factor, but like people almost get creative, and sometimes not seeing things can be more sensual or sexy or titillating than I think seeing stuff. And I mean, that it really ties back into burlesque. Is sometimes, you know, you can like take 15 minutes to pull off a glove, and by the time that last finger's coming off, you are like, take off the glove, I'm dying. And it's fun, and it's not anything sexy. It's like, but you're so like invested. And I've seen depictions in film where sometimes the illusion or the you know, and there were so many veiled references in old movies about how they would refer to things. So there was a great line. We were just watching a movie the other day. And she's like, I'm sorry I keep throwing you all these curves. And he's like, yes, in all the right places. And it was just one of those things where it's like, one of those lines, like, and I'm butchering the line, but I think sometimes people actually are more creative when they're asked to not show you. Or like, you know, you have to figure out a way to like get that same response in different ways. So I think if it's done well, sometimes those can be more exciting and more like, and in my mind, better than a nude scene. I feel like I honestly, like, can only think of a few nude scenes that I feel like were really, like, a strong enhancement to a film. That's just me, I don't know. It's for someone who's naked all the time, you think that I love naked. And I think seeing people naked is lovely. Like, I love bodies. And I think
There's beauty
cool.
in it as well, yeah.
But to me, I kind of want, if I wanted to see nudity, I wanted to, like, advance the plot. I wanted to, like, they're getting into bed, and then she notices he has a scar on his back and realizes he's the villain or whatever, you know. I mean, like, I think that makes, I don't know, like,
that's what they were talking about. I grew up watching horror films, so when I'm a prepubescent kid growing up, I wanted to see the girl naked, but as rewatching them as a 35-year-old man, why are you taking a shower? You just watched your friend get murdered. Why are you hopping in the shower?
That was going to be...
Like, irritates me.
That was going to be my point, actually. Like, I think that if it's something, like, let's say it's a love story, I guess it would make sense if, like, the first time, you know, they made love, you get a sneak peek into that. But there's a difference between that and just crowbarring naked, like, you know, it's like... I get it. I mean, it can be beautiful, and it's sometimes, I don't think it's ever necessary, but it can, like, bring something, you know, that makes sense. But if you're just, like, pushing it, it's like, oh, well, now that's taking, now it's taken away from everything else, and I'm not even into it, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, it's cool, I guess, another naked nudie scene.
It's just like burlesque, if it's done well, then you can be like, that was stunning, and that was beautiful, and like I'm really affected. Or you can be like, okay, and now they're doing it normally, I guess.
Like, why is that bra even coming up? I don't get it.
How do you feel burlesque and belly dancing, Latin dancing? How do you feel like that's portrayed in cinema? I was a big fan growing up. Have you guys ever seen Strictly Ballroom?
Not.
I've heard of it, but I haven't seen it.
I mean, my exposure to like belly dancing and stuff is through cinema. So how do you guys feel like that's portrayed? Is it portrayed well, or is it just Hollywood fluff that people don't? Like the last one I can remember is maybe like Charlie's Angels 2. I think they with the last week's movie.
I feel like a lot of times when you see like a burlesque scene in a movie, it's like they've hired some beautiful actress who doesn't do burlesque to do a scene, and sometimes they do it to varying degrees of success. But like I think in old movies, like depictions of belly dance and stuff like that, it was kind of like how most cultural dances were depicted back in the day, where they were kind of like, it's close enough.
Yeah.
And now obviously there's more of a focus on making sure that things are
A little more accurate.
and in belly dance, it's really fascinating with movies, is movies played a huge role in how belly dance is not only danced in the US, but also in the Middle East, because when movies came out, they started depicting belly dances. Middle Easterners watched these movies, and they started to incorporate aspects of what they were seeing in films into the dance, and now it's become part of the belly dance canon. You know, like, dancing with the veil wasn't something that really has a particular Middle Eastern tie, but it's something that was depicted in movies, and then all of a sudden it becomes part of, like, cabaret dancing. And that's why it's really interesting. Sometimes you meet belly dancers that are doing, you know, what you would traditionally consider belly dancing with a beaded garb, and they're like, I don't like fusion dancing because that's not, like, real. And I'm like, no one, like, your costume isn't, like, it's not a folkloric Middle Eastern type dance costume, you know what I mean? It's an interpretation, modernization. And I think that it's interesting because throughout history there's been that exchange of movies influencing influencing things and vice
Culture,
versa. Yeah. So I think burlesque is interesting. I've been watching old movies, and sometimes there's depictions of burlesque houses in movies, and you kind of assume the movie kind of assumes that you would be familiar with what a burlesque house was. You know, we did a festival in Chicago called the Burning City Burlesque Festival. We had a speaker come in that used to live in Chicago around the time when they had these burlesque theaters and these burlesque clubs, and was telling us a little bit about, like, you know, there was these clubs where you would go in and you would sit down, and women would essentially be paid to not, like, to just sit with you and be like arm candy and eye candy. And they were telling us all of these stories about, like, they would have champagne girls where they would come over and be like, do you want me to sit with you and drink this bottle of champagne? And then, you know, some rich guy would be like, yeah, sure. And then they would of course shake the bottle, and like half of it would come out, and they'd be like, oh, whoops, like I accidentally...
Whoopsie, gotta get cleaned up.
Or this guy was telling me that they would make champagne, they would mix like ginger ale and water and put it in bottles, and then they trained waitresses to go like, to make that popping noise, and when they were pushing off the cork from the top, it wasn't even corked again, but they'd be like, whoop, and they would like make it to trick people. And so, like, I see old movies a lot of times, and sometimes you see these depictions where, like, people walk in, they sit at a table, and all of a sudden there's these ladies, and they come up, and they're like, hey, what's going on? Like, can I sit with you? And there's usually, like, a cabaret singer or, like, a dancer or something in those environments, and I think that's, like, a representation of that period of history when those structures existed. And it was something that it took me a while to realize what that was when I was watching the movie, that I'm like, oh, these are, like, what, like, these clubs would be like, and people... Anyway, it's fascinating. Burlesque, the history of burlesque is really interesting.
It is,
I'm rambling though. So.
No. Do you I had some questions.
No, go for it. Yeah.
Real quick, I don't want to take up your guys' afternoon. So do you have any recommendations? We always give recommendations to anyone listening to burlesque or anything at all you find interesting in any media. Do you have any recommendations for anyone listening?
Well,
to anything.
wow.
If you want to know more about me, I think that's a good question. Do you have anything off the top of your head? I feel like we need to...
Recommendations?
Yeah.
Well, in what aspect necessarily? I'm having a hard time closing.
Anything you're reading or watching, or history of burlesque, or literally anything you want to recommend.
Oh, okay. Well, if you're ever in Chicago, I think that you should check out definitely Jeezy's Juke Joint.
Okay.
I like to promote that because it's one of my favorite freaking shows of the year.
And it tours, so it's not
It
only
tours,
Chicago.
true, but that's true. Yeah, sorry. Okay, so boom.
And that show is an all-black burlesque review, so they get applications from performers of color from all over the U.S. and all over the world now. It's starting to expand and how they produce an all-person of color show, which is really, really powerful, and it's really well curated. So.
And let's see, classes. I don't know if you could ever take a class from like Lady Jack or Jeez Louise herself. Do it. Among many, but those are some of my Chicago top. Eva, I would say Eva, but she's here. So you guys said besides you. So I'm like, well, there's a few.
But you wouldn't recommend, there's this one book that I'm totally escaping the title of, but it talks about, like, again, the history of, like, the burlesque houses in Chicago and things like that. And I can send it to you. Maybe we can post it in the comments below the podcast or something.
Yeah,
but
yeah, absolutely. Check the description for the link.
And there's an author named Leslie Zemeckis. She's written a couple of books about, like, the origins of burlesque through vaudeville houses and things of that nature. So that's interesting to learn a little bit more about the history. And my other recommendation, I guess, would be Filmstruck, which is an online streaming service, and it's got a lot of selection of old movies, including stuff from like the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. So if you don't have it, it's a good resource, especially if you're movie buffs.
All right, great. So my final question before we get to the closing is, I noticed yesterday at the your merch booth, and then you guys brought on today. Do you guys hand make jewelry? Is that what you guys have there?
Yeah.
So how do you go about hand making something as beautiful as jewelry you guys are wearing?
Well, I came last year and I did my whipped cream act, and just on a lark, I was like, I should make little pins that kind of match, because I made those pasties out of those, like, the ones that look like whipped cream. They're just made out of fabric, and so I was like, I'll make little brooches and I'll have them, and see, maybe I'll sell like one or two, and people ended up buying them. And so I was like, when I go back next year, like, we need to, like, put some gears on stuff. It's like, it makes some stuff specifically for steampunk people, because I did feel like the ones last year, I was like, I don't know if people are going to want whipped cream at a steampunk festival, but what I found is people just really wanted to support us as artists, which is, again, so humbling and so wonderful and so important. Like, here, you know, people have been really awesome with, like, you know, purchasing stuff and, like, attending the workshops and really,
yeah, the workshops were really fun.
Yeah.
I had a really good time. People were really interested, and at one point, you know, I thought maybe they don't like it just because they were, like, so engaged, but with, like, just, like,
very intense
faces, and I'm like, maybe they hated it or whatnot. But last night at a show, one of the women that was at the workshop, she came up and she'd applied it, and she looked beautiful, and she was like, I wanted to thank you guys for the workshop, and she had the makeup and the hair, and I'm just like, that is awesome. Like, it just made my night to see her. She wanted to make it a point to come say thank you, because she was so happy with it. So yeah.
Yeah, it's nice to see that people appreciate it. You know.
Yeah, it's very nice.
And with the jewelry, you know, we made all of our stuff has pendants with our faces because we're that many. But yeah, we bought random jewelry, and you know, you just kind of zone out and you start holding stuff up, and it's very relaxing, you know, just to kind of craft and watch Filmstruck and put together some brooches. You know?
Absolutely.
Here's some good music.
All right. Well, do you have any more questions? Okay, ladies, do you have any questions for us before we?
No, but thank you so much for having us on the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me. I just
No, I'm thanking you. I'm thanking you.
We're going to get into a thank for here.
Because, you know, we took up your afternoon. So.
Oh, it was a pleasure. We're happy to be here. So.
All right. So again, for those of you listening at home, we have the beautiful Eva La Feva and Sio Bast. Eva, how do we find you if we want to know more about you?
So you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook under Eva La Feva, which is EVA space LA space FEVA. And my website is Eva La Feva, again, EVALAFEVA.com. And I have information about productions and classes and things there if people have more questions about that.
Okay, and Sio?
I'm on all three of those platforms as well as SioBast. I do believe my Instagram is TheSioBast, and that's my email as well. No, it's TheSioBast_DoomKitty, but I do put it in. Yeah, tell me about my Instagram.
I'm supposed to Doom Kitty, and I'm like, oh, Doom Kitty.
Well, it was Doom Kitty for the longest time, but I had a producer say, could you just please make it SioBast so I can find you? And I'm like, oh my god, okay, that makes sense. And it's also my email, actually, for bookings and stuff. It's thesiobast@gmail.com.
All right, fantastic. Well, check them out at their websites. We'll have the links in the descriptions. Thank you very much, and we're going to go to the next jump cut to the next edit. Or the next interview, sorry.
Alright, we're rocking over here.
Okay. All right. Welcome back to the Image Control Podcasting from Adam's latest jump edit. We are here with the beautiful Amy Wilder, sorry. No, that's two. And three guests. Two of them I've screwed up the name now. Sorry, Amy Wilder. So, Amy, welcome to the Big River Steampunk Festival. How has your convention been so far?
It has been wonderful so far. Other than the fact that it is sweltering hot, it has been perfect.
Yeah, it did cool down to a cool 7.5 billion degrees today.
Yes, it is. Rather than being actively on fire, I'm just singeing today.
All right. So, Amy, for those listening at home, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do around here?
So, my name is Amy Wilder. I am a professional model for a living. I also work for one of the bigger steampunk shops in the United States, Brute Force Studios. So, by day, I make stuff, and also by day, I pose in my underwear.
Okay.
And by night, I sleep a lot.
Sounds like it keep you pretty busy. So, how did you get started into the world of steampunk, just in general? How did you get into that?
So, I've always been pretty nerdy since I was a kid. I have always loved fantasy. I was big in fantasy when I was a kid. Dragons, unicorns, other worlds, anything like that. I got really into anime when I was in middle school and high school, and I attended my first anime event when I was 16 years old. It wasn't an anime event, it was actually Dragon Con. But I started attending a lot of anime events in my area because I wanted to, discover new manga and look at other people's costumes. And I discovered steampunk through that. I saw people in steampunk outfits and was like, oh, this is so neat, what character are you? And they were like, oh, I'm not a character, I'm steampunk. I was like, steampunk? Wow, I can never do that. It's too expensive and detailed. That's so neat. So I had like my whole folder full of steampunk pictures, and I never thought that I would do a steampunk outfit. So I started modeling when I was around 19 years old. I worked at Hooters, and I did their bikini calendar. And so I was kind of discovering modeling and discovering that I enjoyed that, but wanting to be more creative about it because, like a lot of little girls, I grew up reading Vogue and thinking that those models got to keep those outfits, or that maybe actually owned those outfits and was like, I want to play cool dress up too! I want to be a model! And so I forced modeling to be what I wanted it to by somehow becoming a model who plays dress up. I was working for Hooters. I attended an event. There was a designer that I'd been harassing for years who I was like, look, here's me in the Hooters calendar. Can I model for you? And I modeled at a steampunk event. And I attended a few panels. I learned that steampunk is a lot about making your own stuff, that there's a lot of affordable ways to do steampunk. So I started kind of building my own little steampunk outfits and costumes. And I started kind of asking the photographers that I was shooting bikini work with or fashion work with, hey, would you ever want to shoot something like this? And I had no idea how popular that would be. And it's funny to me now that I had no idea how popular that would be because, like, cosplay models is a whole thing where people are like, oh, you're just doing cosplay to be popular. And I'm like, much to the contrary, sir. I had no idea that this would happen. So I liked playing dress up, I liked modeling, I merged the two, and it became inexplicably very successful. So now my main focus in modeling is fantasy and steampunk. And that's what I love.
No, go for it.
So you said you create these costumes and characters. Do you, so, like, you said you're big into animation. What was your anime likes for? So,
my first ever anime was actually a manga that I then discovered there was an anime for. Well, if you can count it as an anime, my first ever anime was Avatar: The Last Airbender, which if you can count that. It's an American anime, but it is very classic to anime.
It's about
the animation style, the plot style. It was one of the first cartoons on Nickelodeon that had a really, really good, deep plot, which is more of an anime thing.
More importantly, what do you think of the live action?
You can just...
Next question.
you can hear it.
I kind of figured that's what it was. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
But, so, I saw somebody reading this comic book, and I was like, oh, that looks like the animation style for Avatar: The Last Airbender, and they were like, duh, it's manga. And so I was like, oh, can I borrow it? And it was a friend of mine, and they were like, yeah, you can borrow it and read it. And it was Inuyasha.
Oh, yeah.
And I fell down the hell pit from there. But my first manga was Inuyasha, and then I got into the anime, which wasn't as good. And I started discovering more from then. I was really into shoujo when I was younger. I had Fruits Basket, Tokyo Mew Mew, Full Moon wo Sagashite. I got into some horror anime by accident because I thought it was shoujo, but it wasn't.
Any Fooly Cooly?
No, I've actually never even heard of that. I'm sorry.
Oh, FLCL?
Yep, FLCL.
That sounds right.
I think so. Yeah, that's one of Cody's favorites for long-term listeners.
Anyway, I got off on the sidetrack. These costumes, characters you make, when you make costume and character for yourself, do you build like a backdoor to it in your own head?
I do. That is my favorite part. I love any fantasy or steampunk costume. I mean, I consider steampunk to be part of fantasy, but I differentiate them because a lot of my fantasy is not steampunk. But any costume that I put together, I always have to have a backstory, because that's part of what helps me portray the character when I'm shooting, what helps me really make sure that the costume is good, to have like my details, my ideas of why. It's also just fun for me. Ever since I was a kid, I liked making up my own stories. My sister and I would just full-on script things in public. But I love coming up with characters for every look. So like, whether it's just like as little as like, oh, I'm a steampunk gunslinger who hates clothes because it's hot today. But sometimes I'll get like really, really into it and have a whole backstory for like the fairy queen, or like I did this entire elf photo shoot in a tree where the backstory was that I was waiting to trap unsuspecting people in the forest into this tree and draw them to me. Or
so does that like subconsciously change your body language? Or you
absolutely. It's one of the things people are like, how do you show such emotion in your shoots? You're so different in each one. And I'm like, because I'm playing a character. Because I got a story going on in my head.
I like that's cool.
Absolutely. Of all the characters that you created and the costumes that you've made, which character is your favorite that you wrote?
My favorite costume is actually, it's not a steampunk costume. I'm a bad person. But my favorite character that I've portrayed is I have a dragon armor costume, and it was sold as a dragon slayer costume, but I added claws and horns, and although you can't see them in the photo shoot, fangs, and became like a human dragon. And my kind of backstory was that I was sort of the idea of a selkie taken into a dragon. I'm a dragon that when I take human form, I wear armor that's dragon skin, but then become a dragon. So that's one of my favorite characters. Like it's a big inside joke among my friends that I like, oh, you are a dragon, like you're a lizard. But that's probably my favorite like character persona that I have like a lot of little like mind backstories that I play with my dragon character.
Do you have all these? Do you like write those down at all, or is it all?
It's all up here. I'm a terrible writer. I know I'm a terrible writer because I've read my own writing and it's terrible.
Well, an artist's worst critic is always themselves.
I mean, there's a point, but I'm that person who will sit there for like an hour and be like, yeah, this is great, this is amazing, I'm the best creative writer, this is a great story, I can't wait to make all my friends read this. And then I'll finish writing for an hour and I'll start reading it and I'll be like, oh my god, this is the worst fan fiction I've ever seen. Did I write this? I'm not a great writer. I am one of those bad fan fiction authors who just gets like way too into myself and my flower language, and then I read it back and I'm like, no one can ever see this. I have to burn it. I do enjoy other people's writing though. I do like to read both the fan writing and professional writing. I really enjoy that.
Okay. So, of the things that you do, you've taken a step that I think a lot of professional models are very scared to do, and that's you do several nude shoots.
Yes, I am actually apparently first and foremost considered a nude model at this point, because once you model naked, you're a nude model forever. But
fair enough. Yeah, I know. I've been following you on Instagram and Tumblr since last Steampunk Festival.
Oh wow! Yay!
Yeah, I saw you at the Blast show last year. No, absolutely not. Don't be sorry. But there are some pictures that would make Adam blush. And how did you get into that? Like, how did you make that jump from I'm a model to I'm someone who poses naked?
I guess in two ways I'll answer this. First I'll answer for me, and then I'll answer in general.
Sure.
So for me, ever since I was a child, I gave my parents heart attacks because I found a Victoria's Secret catalog when I was 4, and I brought it to my mom, and I said, I need a bathing suit like this. And it was hopeless ever since. I have always really just enjoyed the idea of looking sexy. I find that to be empowering for me. My debut as a model was doing bikini stuff for Hooters, and although Hooters is a terrible place to work and I would never recommend it, bikini modeling was really fun for me, and I realized that was something that made me feel really confident, really good about myself, because I was kind of a dowdy-weird kid who wore like 3 winter coats inside, and I kind of discovered my own sexiness, and I discovered that I felt really confident and really unstoppable when I was dressed sexy, and so that was always something I liked. I always enjoyed nude photography and nude modeling. Nude art, all of that. I always really liked it. I don't know, something about it spoke to me. And so when I started modeling, it was a long time before I posed, even in my underwear. I think I was 22 when I posed in my underwear for the first time. And I was really self-conscious, not about doing it, but about what people would say. I was really afraid of what people would say about me and to me. And I think I was pretty lucky. The worst I got was a lot of concerned fans going, "Did you get pressured into this? We loved you before." And I'm like, "Okay, I know. I wanted to. It's fine. You're okay." My first publicly seen nude photo set was a topless photo set for a website called Steam Girl, and that was an erotica site that actually focused on kind of like steampunk Playboy. It's run by an amazing business lady, Kato, and it's steampunk striptease type photo sets, and I really wanted to be a part of it. I saw it online and I was like, I want to be a Steam Girl, and I found out that they modeled nude, and I was like, I'll have to model nude to be a Steam Girl, oh my god. And I did, and I loved it, and ever since then I think it's part of my artistic vision that I enjoy the idea of putting nudity into art, and not just in a sexy way, because it is, not to sound cliche, but it's natural. It's natural. And being nude in nature or incorporating nudity into a character is a lot of fun for me. It gives me a chance to play with lingerie, which I also am lingerie is one of my things that I'm really interested in. I love lingerie, especially historical or fantasy lingerie, kind of figuring out what would an elf wear under her gown, that kind of stuff. The answer is so many sparkles. Chainmail and sparkles. But in a broader sense, there's a lot of people that ask, how do I know that I'm ready to model nude? And the answer to that is when you want to. And if you don't want to, then you're not ready. And if you never want to, then that's okay. You'll never be ready. And there are a lot of people who are never going to be ready to model nude. There are people who don't feel empowered by that and don't feel comfortable with that, and that is fine. For me, it was, my first nude shoot wasn't published until a year after I took it, but it was with a friend, and we were shooting, and I was just like, what would be even cooler if I was topless in these shots? If it's okay, I don't necessarily want them published, but can we take some topless shots? And they were like, sure. And it was somebody I trusted, and so we took some topless shots, and I saw them, and I was like, wow, these are great. I feel so good about myself looking at these. These are awesome. These are so cool. And it took me about a year to share them, but once I'd shared the Steam Girl set, then I was like, well, it's already done. And so I started doing that, and I enjoy it. I love it. I've always liked being naked. Clothes are very stifling. But does that answer your question?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I'm the exact opposite. I don't like freedom.
It's okay. There's lots of people with that fetish.
I gotta be a collar guy. This is the least amount of shirts I've ever worn.
That is true. He is normally a 3 to 4 shirt kind of guy.
Well, don't worry. I won't tell anybody about your slutty t-shirt.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Your slutty t-shirt layered on top of another t-shirt.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not really, I very much envy that.
Shameful arms.
I know it. It's too much skin for me.
I'm sorry. I hope I'm not making you super uncomfortable with my suspender booty shorts and my nipple shirt.
Well, that's what I wear to cut grass every day.
That's what I wear to cut grass too. My neighbors hate me.
Going back to saying you found I don't want to misquote. You found your sexiness, or you found that being empowering. we're comic book nerds. Sounds like you're more on the manga side. There's a lot of controversy going on, because like male superheroes are all armored up, and then the female superheroes they've got like a tube top or something. How do you feel about the way women superheroes are portrayed with the outfit wise?
I feel that it's very unfair that I can't check out a comic book with men in thongs.
Well, we'll have to let you know when we do the Men of Damage Control podcasting calendar.
No, I'm wearing a on the outside.
See, I have such mixed feelings about this because I am a very outspoken feminist, and I do really want to see more badass women who are portrayed the way a badass woman would be in real life. I want to see more, like I say, Atomic Blonde is one of my favorite movies that's come out recently because they show her fighting like a person really fights. She goes down, she gets hit. It's not sexy. She has to use her size as an advantage. She gets thrown, she bleeds, she gets bruises. My God, showing a woman that got in a fight with actual bruises, that is awesome. Because so many badass women are of the Black Widow type, and I love Black Widow. She's awesome. She's a bad bitch. But you can't really attack people with your crotch. That's not a real thing. If your first attack was actually to do a full split kick, that is the worst way to get thrown. That is the worst way to get thrown.
Have you ever seen the remake, attacking people with crotches? You've seen the remake of Total Recall?
No, I haven't.
Okay. So Colin Farrell and Kate Beckinsale are fighting, and he's like on a lower level, and Kate Beckinsale's on a higher level like this, and his head's just peeking out. She like slides rock and roll style and like shoves her crotch into his neck.
Yes, it's like the scissor choke. And now scissor chokes are a real wrestling move, but they're not the only wrestling move, and they're not even a good wrestling move.
Man, me and you talk about movies. I think in Atomic Blonde, isn't there a scene where after one of the fight scenes, she's got like a bathtub?
Yes, she's in an ice bath and she looks terrible. Yeah, and I love that because that's what any woman in a fight like that would look like. Like Black Widow should be in an ice bath every night. The idea that Black Widow gets fully thrown against a wall and gets back up without even making a sound, that's ridiculous.
I don't want to put you on the spot. I do this to these guys all the time.
All the time.
They hate me for it. I don't want to put you on the spot. So you know how like old guys kicking ass is like Liam Neeson and all them. Who would you cast like an old lady kicking ass, or like an older lady kicking ass? I probably put you on the spot, and I apologize.
You are. I'm not great with actresses' names.
Okay. All right, fair enough. All right, anyway, moving on. I do take
but
one more time.
no, I'm sorry. I'm not great with actresses' names, but there's some great ones out there that I would love to see, and I don't know their names because I'm not a pop culture person. But Charlize Theron did an excellent job in Atomic Blonde. I love that they didn't cast like an 18-year-old, that they did cast someone with some maturity. And again, the idea that she makes unflattering sounds when she gets punched, that she falls, that she has to use her strength against people instead of just full on fighting like she somehow is that strong, was so cool to me. And I love sexy outfits. I love sexy superhero outfits. I will stare at them all day. They make me happy in my heart. But I would love to see some female superheroes that look the way a female superhero should, that have outfits that make sense for what they're doing. That, they have outfits that look like they could fight in them, that look like they'd be comfortable. I want to see some fighting poses that are accurate. I want to see that. I like sexy. I think it's based on the story. Back to anime. Fan service is very much a thing, but also anime definitely needs to dial back their fan service. There is a lot of times when the fan service becomes almost as a detriment to the story. Like, the story would be better if it wasn't there kind of thing. So, I guess, bring on the sexy, but also let's be realistic sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. I can agree with that.
One of the things I like is that some of the more recent comics that I've seen, the illustration shows the female superheroes being kind of thicker bodied because they are buff, being really muscular. Instead of just being like these runway models with six packs, they have big arms, they have thick thighs. Yeah, Ronda Rousey, exactly. That's something that's made my soul really happy because that is so sexy. And there's women who are like, oh, I don't want to work out because I won't be sexy. Excuse me? You will be so sexy.
While we're on the subject, one of the things I'd like to do is get your opinion on things that we've discussed in the podcast. Now, if you haven't listened to any of our episodes, I can't blame you. But we are usually 4 to 5 guys talking about different topics. And I would love to know a woman's opinion on a few of these things. And one of them is, going back to the idea of feminism, you are familiar with X-Men Apocalypse, that movie?
Yes, vaguely.
Oh, okay.
I admit that I haven't seen it.
Okay, you're not missing much. There was a lot of controversy around some of the promotional material. So the main villain is Apocalypse, who's a big mean guy, and the main hero, quote unquote, is Mystique, who is a female superhero supervillain. And there was a lot of controversy over a billboard where Apocalypse was holding Mystique by the throat. And from our perspective, we were all like, well, that's kind of silly to have controversy over that because the superhero, supervillain, they're fighting. I would love to know what your opinion is on that.
Again, that is a multifaceted answer. So I will say I don't find it to be inherently offensive because, oh, well, male violence against women. She's fighting a villain. She's a badass. Like, yeah. What, you want this to be like a villain who's too much of a gentleman to fight a woman? Come on, that's sexist. That's sexist. Now, what I will say is that the promotional material, I didn't find it sexist. I did find it to be... I understood where some people were coming from, saying that it was maybe unnecessarily shocking. That maybe there are women or children or people that would be, because of whatever life experiences, would be upset by just seeing that out of nowhere. That maybe a more tasteful way to do that would be to show them maybe clashing fists or kind of approaching each other, getting ready to fight. That the full-on choke, even for a male hero, is a little bit shocking and a little bit in your face and out there. I didn't find it to be inherently sexist, but it could have been more tasteful, if that makes sense. I understand where maybe a person with a traumatic past, having been abused or having seen someone else be abused, would be really upset by just seeing that billboard going about their day. But I did not find it sexist.
Now, I really appreciate that answer because I get to sometimes hear debates about censoring art and movies. Art should never, ever be censored, no matter what the subject is. It's about where it's displayed, which is basically what you said. That whereas a child who unfortunately sees their dad do that to their mom or vice versa, they see that, 75 feet across, they not understand the concept of two movie characters. They see that in their daily life and they see it on the screen. Then they, at that point, their brain's still forming opinions on social stuff. So,
and there's a difference between seeing that on screen in the movie and just outright seeing it on a sign,
Exactly, yeah.
And it is, one of those things where that's a bad guy and only bad guys choke women or people in general.
Right.
But at the same time, again, it was very shocking, and I think that was the point, that they wanted to shock people, but I think that it was could have been better thought out. I think they could have showed a more family-friendly version of that clash that is less scary and less upsetting and honestly less PG-13 in public.
Okay.
I love that.
Yeah. So while we're on the topic of movies, one of the things, again, that we have had this discussion about several times on the podcast is about the nudity in cinema. We've discussed it at some length, and us on the podcast, again, 4 to 5 guys usually. And I would reasonably say that about 20% of us is us being skeevy men, and about 80% is us actually appreciating what the artistic vision of the director is. What is your opinion on nudity in cinema and basically how it affects the art of the director's vision? Basically, we fell into 2 camps where it was the director's vision, it's art, and then the other side was it should be rewritten in such a way that the nudity wasn't necessary for the art.
I think I've seen a lot of nudity in cinema in my time that kind of seemed to just be there because they want to sell it with, by the way, Scarlett Johansson's titties. And that, that's valid. Sex sells. that's a true thing. Obviously I am a nude model. I model really incredible costumes that should be great on their own, and instead I take them off. So I get the idea that sex sells. But at the same time, there is something to be said for, there's a lot of nudity in Hollywood that is not necessary. You know, Game of Thrones is a great show, and there is nudity in it that is totally badass and totally artistically necessary. There's also nudity in it that's like, really? Did you just had to throw some titties into this scene? You just had to? Like, I will never forget, I had heard that there was, oh my gosh, in this season there's a full-on penis in Game of Thrones. And I was like ready for the sex scene where they finally show us both of the people naked, and then it's just some woman sitting on a throne and there's some guy's dick out, and I was like, really? That's your excuse to put a penis in? Just that? Like, you just wanted to be shocking? That was just what you wanted to do?
Wasn't that dude with like a 17-inch one? Isn't that who it was? I've never seen the show. So.
It was just some guy lounging next to a throne with his dick out. And like, it was a little like, was that necessary? Was that super necessary? Like, with all the full-on sex scenes in the show, and this is where you're gonna do this? Like, you just wanted to be shocking. And like, on one hand, it did really give you like a shocking smack in the face of that character's introduction of like, whoa, okay, this character is totally a hedonist. But at the same time, it was like, all right, guys, come on, you didn't have to do that. Like Daenerys. Every scene where Daenerys burns a building down and walks out naked is just so freaking badass and resplendent and like best artistic nudity choices. But at the same time, there's some sex scenes where it's like, you just put titties in here so people would listen.
The dialogue's important. Get them focused. Yeah.
Unless you're watching Game of Thrones with someone like my mom who fast forwards through every sex scene, making it basically impossible to catch the plot.
Ooh, yeah, that would be awkward. That would be hard though. Yeah. So speaking of things in pop culture, go for it.
You don't have to answer this. So speaking of nudity in cinema, I asked the guys growing up as boys, if we were watching a movie that my parents didn't know about, it had nudity, we either had to leave the room or they would cover our eyes. As a lady, did you have to, because there was a lady being naked?
I was super ridiculous sheltered as a kid. The story before about the Victoria's Secret catalog, my mother actually called the Victoria's Secret main office as like a concerned mother, TM, to yell at them about how just sending the Victoria catalog to anyone was so inappropriate because, you know, there's lots of people with children who don't need to see that, and my daughter doesn't need to see a G-string, and now it's so funny because my mom is so chill now, but back then I was super sheltered, and it was kind of a thing where we never watched anything in our house that was more than PG ever. My parents were the you can watch PG-13 when you are 13 kind of parents. But when it went further on, it became that kind of, as I said, we'd be like sitting watching a show, and then suddenly it would become like a sex scene or a nude scene, and like it's ingrained in my head the exact sound of my mother going and fast forwarding while shrieking at the same time. I think my mother is the only person I know who hates nudity that watched the entirety of True Blood on purpose.
Oh wow!
She missed half the plot because of it. But she hates nudity is a strong word. She disapproves of unnecessary nudity on film. But I was really sheltered. I didn't see full-on nudity until I had access to the internet alone. And, you know, it was one of those, like, I accidentally, my love of anime stumbled me upon some unfortunate websites as a teenager. I'm sure my sexuality was forever scarred.
I think we've all been down those rabbit holes.
Some of us have a hard time getting out.
But as a girl, I think I don't know, I've always been weird about that. I've always found the hatred of nudity to be so stupid, because as a kid I was like, I don't get it. Why is it a problem? Like we all have these parts. We all look a certain way. I never understood. I famously, when I was in high school, I was known as like the prude girl who got embarrassed by everything, and because I had been so sheltered that I was so easily embarrassed, and my friends at one point were, oh, well, we don't want to play truth or dare with you because you never do anything. You're no fun. And I was like, fell for that trap, hook, line, and sinker. Fine! The next thing you dare me to do, I'll do it no matter what! And it is, I still haven't gotten past it with the friends who still know me from then, because they were like, well, we dare you to show us your boobs. And I walked around for like 15 minutes yelling about, there, see? It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. Now you've seen them. Now shut up. Because I just always thought it was so stupid. And like the idea, you know, when I was doing bikini competitions and I would change in front of the other girls and they'd be like, oh my God, I've heard of you. You're that girl who just like walks around naked. And I'm like, oh, the 10 square inches that we're not going to show on stage in 3 seconds. Oh no. It just, I have never understood the huge taboo. It's always been so silly to me. I mean, like, there's, you know, obviously covering your bits has a history in protecting them from the elements and protecting yourself. And there isn't, you know, the people who are like, oh, there's literally nothing sexual about a woman's breasts. Well, no, that's not true. They are inherently a sexual aspect of the body. Humans are one of the few species where the females have breasts when they're not lactating. It is specifically a sexual attraction feature. That's true. However, the societal craziness around nipples is also dumb. It goes both ways. So, you know, as a kid, I was super sheltered from the female body, but I never really understood why. I would, you know, I'd be that kid who stops in front of the Victoria's Secret for way too long and is like, what? But, you know, I got made fun of in school because I always found the female body really artistic and would draw lots and lots and lots of women in lots and lots of sexy outfits. And people would be like, what's wrong with you? Why do you draw this girl? Because it's pretty.
Is that how your costumes start? Is drawing?
Some of them, yeah. Not all of them. It's kind of either I'll draw the costume and then try to find or make it, or sometimes I'll find the costume and then I'll draw something around that. Many of my costumes, when I'm putting it together, the first thing I'll do is draw it to see how it's going to look.
Okay. So do you ever just like add something like this, or just grocery shop or something? Do you ever just see like small item and just brain explodes and just costume falls around? Or how does it?
Yes, that totally has happened. Okay. My first full steampunk costume that I put together was based on a pair of shorts that I bought at a thrift shop that were kind of like a short, puffy Victorian pantaloon style. And I bought these shorts, and then I was online, and I saw a picture of a girl in a corset with an airship harness. So I drew a picture of a character wearing the shorts that I already owned with kind of a corset airship harness based on what I'd seen online, and then I set out to find the rest of the costume pieces and build that costume. And that'll happen a lot. I'll just have one accessory that I'll buy, and then I'll spend the next year buying things to build a costume around just that one piece.
Or someone who doesn't cosplay, I'm pretty, I don't like, are some of these outfits, what?
Well, go.
Some of these outfits, are they, the corsets and stuff, are they comfortable? Some of these things I'm seeing ladies wear, I'm like, oh man,
I mean, first of all, everyone wearing a corset in this weather has my respect.
Okay.
Every single one of them. I cannot, oh my god, that must be hell. But corsets are not as horribly uncomfortable as people think they are, but they are not comfortable. They're not gonna be. A dress isn't comfortable. If you're wearing a prom dress, it's not comfortable. High heels are not comfortable, but they're also not the excruciating torture devices that people think corsets are.
Okay.
You know, I will tell people famously that high heels have been scientifically proven to cause more medical problems than corsets. So it's, it's a little bit of the, it's worth it because I look cool, and then there's a little of the trying to make it comfortable. With the corsets, I will tangent on corsets all day because I love them and I always have. But a good corset does not hurt. if you put on a corset, and there are man corsets, so that's not out of the question.
Okay.
But if one puts on a corset and one is immediately in pain, one should take that corset off immediately and not wear it, because it's probably ill-fitted to you or just ill-made and hurting you.
Is it there to shape? Is that what the corset's?
Yes, a good corset will squeeze only your soft parts.
Okay.
If the corset is crushing your ribs, no, don't do that. Don't do that. If the corset's crushing your hip bones, same things. When I was younger, I had a bad corset that crushed my hip bones, and I didn't know any better than to just wear it because I thought corsets were supposed to hurt. And I ended up with like scars on my hips because they actually like scraped my skin.
Oh, wow.
So now I know better. Now I know much better than that. But not all my costumes are comfortable. Some of them are super uncomfortable, but none of them are actively painful.
Do you use that uncomfortability in your character in your head? Is that or is that just?
I admit, no, that I don't. I totally do subscribe to the superhero costume law when it comes to my costumes. It is like, oh yeah, I'm totally a warrior huntress in a leather corset.
Gotcha. Okay.
But, then part of that is, I do kind of get that into, like, when I do the stripteases, sometimes I'll factor in, like, oh, I'm taking this outfit off so that I can climb. Like, I did a dragon-type outfit where I did, as I was slowly climbing higher up in this mountain, I lost more clothes until I'm, like, in this little cave outcropping with just the sword and nothing, like, and this is my nest.
Let me ask if you need the armor.
Absolutely.
RPG armor rules. The smaller, the more powerful.
That is true.
All right. Well, I think we're coming to a close here. I don't have any more questions. Adam, do you?
Do you have any, besides your stuff, do you have any recommendations on steampunk or manga or, anything you're into? Would you recommend anything in any medium in the world that you're into that you want more people to...
Oh my gosh, just put me on the spot, why don't you?
I'm sorry. I do it all the time.
Well, let me just pimp out my company real quick.
Absolutely.
I work for an amazing steampunk and fantasy costuming and prop company called Brute Force Studios. We make everything from humorous steampunk pins to fully automated mechanical arms. And everything in between. It's actually the company that made my dragon armor as well. And they are awesome. If you haven't heard from them, then you should absolutely check them out. Brute Force Studios by Thomas Williford is the company owner.
Now you said, not to interrupt you, but you said that you made stuff besides costumes, right? You make stuff for that company?
Yes, I do. I'm still learning, but I do a lot of the leather work with them. Leather work is definitely the thing I'm best at. I also do a little bit of sewing for them, detailing, that kind of thing. I have done some design work for them before because the owner of the company doesn't draw, so when people want sketches, a lot of the time I'll be the one doing the design sketches.
Do you throw that leather work back in your costuming?
Absolutely. Most of my leather accessories are made by me or the company.
All right, okay, cool.
I love making leather accessories. I have a background in ceramics, and I found that working with leather is actually very similar to slab building with ceramics in a way. When you're, kind of cutting these flat shapes and then making something out of them.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Okay. And where do we go to find out more about Brute Force?
We are on Facebook and Instagram most predominantly.
Okay,
and then there's also the Etsy shop, which is because last year at Comic-Con our website crashed because we were so popular.
Oh no!
And so we're working on getting a better website, but we have an Etsy shop currently.
Well,
okay, and that's just...
If your website's going to crash, it's one of the better reasons for it to crash.
Absolutely. And that's just bruteforce.com?
Bruteforcestudios.com.
Studios.com. Okay, perfect. Yep, and we are coming to a close now. So, Amy, do you have any questions for us before we call it a day?
What do you fear most?
Ooh.
Actually, large groups of people. Daniel had to drag me down here.
Same, no, bro. Same.
Daniel's like, we're gonna interview Amy Watt, but I don't want to talk to strangers. He's like, I'll go get her. You just say.
I feel you. That's a big mood, man.
I had to double dose on my anxiety.
That's a great big mood.
So I appreciate you taking your time.
Yeah,
absolutely. Thank you so much for interviewing me.
Yep. So how do we find out more about Amy Wilder? Where do we go?
Well, you can find me on Instagram is the social media I'm most active on right now. So I am very active on Instagram. I have a Facebook and a Tumblr as well that I need to pay more attention to. If you want to see my more raunchy work, you can follow me on Patreon. It's all Amy Wilderness. All my social media is Amy Wilderness because I think I'm clever. So that's how you find me. You can also find me through Brute Force Studios. I model a lot of their work.
All right, sounds great. Well, thank you very much, Amy. I appreciate you being on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much. It's been amazing.
We've got about half an hour or so we're going to aim for that.
All right, that's time to introduce her.
Hidden ball me.
This is a lot like our podcast.
It is.
Normally we're just like over here talking about a fun
I give you a countdown.
Yeah. Well, I'm not listening.
It's only
to you.
10 minutes.
Adam is great about the hidden ball trick. We'll just be talking, waiting for him to get the technical stuff. He'll reach over and hit the microphone, and it's like, oh, yes, we are talking about cannibalism on the Himalayan mountains. Thank you.
Our buddy Ash always loves doing the Michael start, and he'll just start with the phrase like, and that was the second time I got herpes. And then it'll be like, oh, hello, how are you?
All right, so welcome to Damage Control Podcasting. I am here with the ScallyWags at this year's Big River Steampunk Festival. Gentlemen, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourselves real quick?
Hello, I'm Randy Bones. I am Robin Banks.
I'm Frankie.
Little Beard.
Biggin. That's great. So for those who may not know who you guys are a pirate-themed comedy troupe. Is that accurate?
That's somewhat.
It's actually a comedy-themed pirate group.
We shoot for comedy, sometimes don't hit it.
I was like, okay, what are we?
We do stuff other than pirate stuff sometimes, but mostly focused to pirate. We've done this for so long that even if we don't do pirate stuff, people look at us and go, like, we'll do zombie stuff, and people go, oh, look, zombie pirates. I don't know where that comes from, but yeah.
So how did you guys get started with the troupe?
Really bored and could never get laid. So,
Adam was chewing.
That's how it works. Back in the day, my brother and I used to go to Renaissance fairs, and we always looked at people on stage and said, hey, we want to be that. And I'm giving you a condensed version of this, but because we've been around for 20 years, we've been doing this.
Wow.
And so we wanted to do it, and when we first started, before we got hired at a gig, we were doing a promo, like a video promo. And we were doing audience participation. We had friends show up. Big in here was one of the friends that showed up. We pulled him up on stage as an audience volunteer. So he's kind of been there from the beginning, even though originally it was me and 3 other people. One of them was my girlfriend at the time, who is now my wife, and has learned that this fart joke stuff is not for her.
Well, apparently she couldn't get laid either.
Yeah, no.
Wait a minute, what?
What are we talking about?
No, we
Yes.
So we did this for a number of years. We were doing it for maybe about a year, and then Biggin jumped on right then. And he was traveling around with us anyway. Jumped on, started doing the shows. We wrote a couple shows. It used to be we wrote like a new one every year. Right now we're pretty well known for 3 or 4 staple shows that we do. Then years later, we've had a number of members have come and gone. Not in a bad way, just people grow up. And Robin joined, 14 years ago or something like that?
About 16.
16 years ago. Bones, we got about 4 years ago.
5 maybe.
And
I'm the new one.
Frankie, yeah, we just got him a couple months ago. You notice the less gray in the beard is what gives it away.
You have been here since the beginning, so you're 5 years.
Yeah, you've been at Big River since the beginning for sure.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that was actually really fun to see. Because they set it up in that parking lot back over there.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys saw it.
It was very open, and that's pretty much what it was. There was some tents, and now it's just...
The first year I was been doing the ScallyWags for about 20 years. For a short time, I did another comedy sketch group called Beard and Bean, and we'd gotten hired, and the guy who did it with couldn't show up, so I turned to the Wags. That first year Big River happened, we came here, and the whole thing was in that little parking lot where that red and white tent is over there.
Oh, wow.
The whole festival was right there. And a lot of it was improv. They're like, hey, have you ever done like a costume contest before? And we're like, sure, we'll do it. And it wasn't poorly organized or anything. It was actually really well organized. It wasn't big enough yet. And it has now grown into this huge thing. And we absolutely love it here. So.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know, we have taken over about 4-ish blocks of downtown Hannibal, Missouri. Maybe a little bit bigger.
And then there's the vendor area down by the river.
Yeah, that grass area, the Midway Park, is absolutely huge. That's at least like a soccer field full of vendors. So yeah, Big River Steampunk Festival is significantly larger than the little parking lot now.
Right. Oh yeah.
That's part of the charm of it, is they have blocked off this whole downtown area, that whole old area where you can just wander through and see the architecture, the old shops. It's a lot of fun.
Drink every time you read Mark Twain.
That was just another original drinking game. It's like, hey, I got an idea. Anything you see that's Mark Twain related, you have to take a drink.
There is an actual
We got
video
2
on our
blocks.
website.
Yeah.
We're just going through and get very far. It's awesome.
Do you guys, being here for 5 years, do you guys have like returning fans every year?
Oh, easily.
You guys recognize?
Matter of fact, this year has been a little weird for us for sure because normally we do shows on Main Street, and I also MC the event, so I'm like running the costume contest or doing opening ceremonies. So people see all that. This year, instead of us doing all our shows on Main Street like normal, they wanted to do some specialty shows. So like we did the Pirate Riverboat Cruise. The show you just saw us finish up was a more private pirate game show kind of thing. So this year's weird because we have all these fans come up going, hey, when can I come see your show? When can I come see your show? And it's like, well, we're only doing specialty shows now, which is
until Monday.
Until Monday, we're doing one for everybody on Main Street on Monday. So that has kind of thrown a kink into the way we do things.
Completely threw me off though, because it's like normally it's like, when's our next show? You get ready and you've got so much time in between, whether it's taking care of personal business like hygiene or whatever, or hey, I got time to go eat between these 2 shows. Now it's like, we got how many hours?
Wow.
I'll go drink. I'll go do this.
Which has been the benefit because they treat us like gold here, and they said, you guys should get out and instead of just working the whole time, get out and enjoy. Thing is, we do enjoy performing, and plus it gets us good tips.
There you go. Yeah. I'm missing this time.
Yeah, but so it's nice to get out there and actually perform and do stuff. So we every once in a while we'll even stop and just do some improv stuff. Like we did the Riverboat last night, so we stopped and for a bunch of fans we did a number of adult-themed songs in the park, just about 20 minutes of a show, and it was great.
I thought I heard you guys doing some of that when I was heading to the burlesque show last night.
That was probably it. Yeah, the one we did in the park, because that's why we didn't make it to the burlesque show last night.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah, some of those songs are the get you fired kind of songs.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just having memories of the burlesque show.
I thought I felt the table raise a little bit.
My pants did get shorter.
Burlesque show has always been one of our favorite shows here. The first year they did the burlesque show, and we did a little kind of adult show afterwards. The second year we were a little nervous because they didn't have Sammy, who is gold, Sammy Tramp, that MC's at. They didn't have her doing the MC yet. So there was another troupe here, which we got along with great, and they didn't know who they wanted to MC it. So they said, well, should we have the Pirates do it or these other guys? And everybody just kind of said, just have them both do it at once. So they got this like really sophisticated, we'll say hipsterish group from Chicago, and us Kansas Pirates. So we did this whole bit where they had sophisticated body humor and we were just dirty, filthy people. And so we'd get up on stage and just bash each other continuously, back and forth. And it worked like a champ.
Oh, no, it did work.
And it was all done good fun.
It was actually me and Biggin sitting on the front stage waiting for everybody to fill in. And we're just sitting there joking around, trading, just jokes and laughs. Pretty soon we're like, I got to load my cup. Glass? You got a glass? I got a glass. We're just passing glass back and forth. We're just kind of goofing around. People are sitting there watching and applying like,
it's because they thought you were Statler and Walt.
They thought we were doing like a bit, and we're like, no, we're just drinking, actually. We're waiting for the show to start.
We're not pretending to be alcoholic pirates. We are.
This is still like my favorite little memory of that. It's like, what in the world's going on here?
What are some of your guys' inspirations what are some of your inspirations?
I can guarantee none of us will say Johnny Depp. I can guarantee that right now. That's the first thing people say is, oh, do you love Johnny Depp?
Yeah, I'm not going to say he's not a great actor and everything like that. As far as, the Jack Sparrow thing now.
Brilliant.
You see so many hundreds of Jack Sparrows through the years. We were actually doing the pirate gig well before the Pirates of the Caribbean hit the theaters. So, we had a little gimmick that we did every now and then at some of the fairs because you'd see somebody do it, and they'll play back a lot of the time. So we get a little stereotype pad in their hand, we walk around and go, all right.
Because there were so many Jack Sparrow impersonators,
Braids are out of voice, say something. No, that's off. Okay, why? No swagger. How about the no, that eyeliner's just over the top. That's way too much. No.
But inspiration-wise, we all had different groups we look up to. Still now, even there's groups that we work with now that came a long way after us that we look at and go, I want to be more like them.
I want to throw a real big name out there as far as the comedy aspect of what we do.
It might be the same one I'm about to write.
Mel Brooks.
Oh, no, yeah.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
See, I was thinking
Brooks. I'm telling you what, there's a whole lot of real funny stuff that guy's got.
We all come from that generation, Monty Python, Mel Brooks, that kind of.
We do?
Because those that listen, well, not Frankie. Those listening on the podcast can't see us old farty pirates back here.
And me.
The one for me, if you ever go to Ren Fairs here in the Midwest, there was a guy called Axel the Sod. He was probably one of my biggest influences looking up to. He'd play drunk lush on stage that would just sing dirty songs and tell jokes and stuff. And I just absolutely loved him. First gig I ever got hired to play, they put me on stage with Axel the Sod. And I was so nervous. It was tough, but I love it. And now Axel he loves coming and doing shows with us, seeing us 20 years later. It's amazing. So that's one of my big ones. Do you guys have inspirations?
I can tell you, but you're not going to believe me.
Okay, let's hear it.
Pertaining to the group, okay?
Okay, so I've actually known these guys for at least 16 years.
Oh, the answer is us.
I've been a part of it for
I can buy that.
But yeah, it really was.
Oh, was it? I was so
because we did the McCains, we're doing these Scottish characters. And I was like, those are pirates, but they don't look like. Oh, it's my R lineup. I like that. So yeah, that was kind of.
Okay. Yeah, but you were performing before you met us. You were doing the McCain Scottish act.
And the Italians, the Venetian ambassadors, where you come over and Jeff would say one thing in Italian, and then I would just completely mistranslate it. So then he'd be like, ultimo. Smack me on the back of the head. Oh, yeah, that's not what he said, sorry. So we would do a lot of that kind of stuff. And then finally, it was actually Robin Banks that talked me into joining. I was like, all right, I got to do this. I got to try it.
Well, with you, I know that a couple times, like we were short a member, and we said, hey, let's try to get Jeff or Jamie from your show, and you were always busy, couldn't do it. So it took us years to recruit you.
And then the last bit, I really wanted to too. I was like, I got to get through school because I knew there was no way I'd be able to focus and do both. Like, all right, so
this job doesn't pay well enough to go to school and do this job. I guarantee that.
I've got limited brain space here. Okay?
What about you, Robin? Do you have
I was always inspired by like the classic dirty mouth stand-up comics, the George Carlin, the Rodney Dangerfield,
John Balby.
Yeah, that's your go-to.
So typically, if they had shows that my parents wouldn't have let me listen to, and they let me listen to a lot, then I appreciated their humor. I see things all the time, like Rodney Dangerfield on stage, and a heckler yells out, "How big is your member?" And without even thinking, he looks out in the crowd and says, "What, don't you remember?"
That's still one of my favorites.
I hear things like that, I remember them, and I think, I want to be that good someday.
I'm curious what the puppy has to say for his influence. Because if you say like Justin Bieber, something we're all leaving.
No, it's actually you guys.
Oh, it's Jamie already used that one.
Well, I mean, I hadn't actually been performing at all before I got into it. No. And Jamie was, but you guys needed some help and asked me, and I had watched a lot of your shows, and
we're still looking for help.
Yeah, which it does boil down to us, because a lot of people ask, how do you get new members? Like, oh, I bet you go out and you find these other performers and recruit. It boils down to a couple things. Number one, can we get along with that person? That's a big part, because when you're traveling on the road, it's a camaraderie thing. Number two, could I handle being in a car for 7 hours with that person? Those are the two biggest things. Three, not do they have a sense of humor to tell the jokes we have, do they have a sense of humor to take the jokes we're going to tell about them? If we can get those things, we're golden. And that's where Frankie fit in, unfortunately.
Yay!
So.
What have I gotten into?
And then we've got to ask ourselves, can we handle their significant other?
Yeah. But your significant other's all right. I can get away with that.
Okay.
Sorry.
So we're writing. We talked a lot about the writing process. Is there what is your guys'
writing? It's a horrible process.
It's very long and drawn out.
Very long. It used to be I would write pretty much everything and then kind of run it by people. Over time, as we rehearse stuff. We would just kind of add stuff in. So when new people, like when Bones joined or Frankie, we can't even give them a script because the scripts were written up 15, 20 years ago or something, some of these shows. And they'll go, well, this doesn't match up at all. Because we end up ad-libbing so much, we just remember it. So right now when we do write a new show, it pretty much comes with, hey, I've got an idea. Like, for example, right now we're working on one called Dungeons and Pirates. And so then...
the idea is a role-playing game turned into, an interactive audience skit. Absolutely.
So, like, on that one, Bones came with the idea, wrote a rough outline. Like,
very rough. Yeah.
Hey, we're going to do in 3 parts, we always have a beginning, a middle, and an end. So it's like, hey, here's the idea. I want the idea. We get some people up on stage, run them through a D&D game, but we do it in our regular comical way. So then we just sit around, start telling some jokes, write an idea, and as long as we have an ending to get to, the whole thing ends up being improv when we're sitting at Biggin's house having beers. We just start filling in blanks, start adding stuff.
That's called wagging it up.
Wagging it up.
And when we're wagging up a show, the most common phrase said is, oh, that's funny. We can't use it.
Yeah, we can't use it. There's a lot of jokes we'll tell. It's like, we could never do that in public.
If you want to get hired again, right?
Matter of fact, this weekend we were going to do a special show called the Fat and Happy Show, where we get together in the bar and have food and dinner with fans, and then they get to hear all the stuff that we will never do on stage, and fans love that stuff. So we've thought about that, but that kind of stuff happens. The show you just walked into, the game show, it is something we tried for the first time this weekend. And like yesterday's show, today's went much better than yesterday's because we'd already done it once. We wagged it up a little bit. So we will take notes from today's show. When we get home, write it down, and by this time next month, we'll have a show out of it. So
that's really interesting that it all kind of stems from improvisational that you just turn into a thing. And so, is there like a really steep learning curve when Frankie joined? Like, and I'm going to throw Frankie under the bus. Has he screwed something up?
Oh no, we've screwed it up for him. Yeah. He'll always go like, "That's not what you guys said yesterday." And it's like, "No, we thought about it. We had a drink, and this is better."
I think what's funny though is when we look at the comparisons, like the whole Pirates of the Caribbean thing, and everybody always says, it's more like guidelines.
Right.
Yeah. That's kind of what we do when we're doing the writing thing. You got the body of the show, so you have a general direction, guidelines.
Right.
So it's like we know how we're going to start, and we know how it should finish. And then we get in the middle of it and go, no, leave that line out. And then it would just go. And then after a while, it just morphs into, here it is.
Yeah, and then we get up on stage and somebody in the crowd says something and something hits our head. And it's like, I'm going this way.
Yeah, there's a lot of improv. I think one of the biggest barriers that new guys like Frankie will run into is, A, we don't always write it down for a script. B, we have certain ticks with each other we can do. So like today I might cue in on a joke, like when we did the dove thing, and I said, oh, the dove is the international symbol of love, and you looked at me and said...
No. It's a swallow. A swallow is the international symbol of trust.
So that's a joke we've used in the past, but it came apart in another thing, so we said, okay, let's just use that. That'll now be part of the show and never written down. However, we're trying out some new songs. Frankie can learn a song like this. I mean, right. He knows the song, knows all the words, and even better yet, he can sing. Ooh. We are not as good at singing. Individually, we can be okay, but we don't harmonize as well. So that's been very frustrating for him because he'll be like, hey, let's do this song. And like 2 or 3 of the guys will get it, and the rest of us will just be like, can't we do this like a bunch of drunk pirates would? So I think that's a learning curve that's been a little difficult. Yeah.
You were trying to explain to me the other day. No, that's 3-5-2-4 harmony. I don't care.
Well, I think the fun thing about the approach of not being able to harmonize, because it's possible if we actually really got down and hunkered down, honed up, and learned.
Tried real hard.
But there's so many singing pirate groups out there now. We're comedy, so it's like, okay, well, let's make it funny. Well, let's slaughter the hell out of that song then.
Yeah.
And purposely make it way off key.
I will say, from the performances that I've seen, that method is a lot more engaging for me personally, because it's a lot. It ties into your character. It's more realistic for me. It reminds me of there are video games where you can hear sea shanties as you sail, and it reminds me going back to that rather than like a barbershop quartet where everyone can play.
Right, sounds so perfect. I think part of that reflects into we don't say we have fans, we have friends. And it's that same mentality where they always go like, oh no, I feel like you guys are actually screwing around with us. It's actually like a bunch of drunk buddies getting together and doing something, and not just you're the talent on stage performing at us and not with us.
And in some cases we are a bunch of drunk buddies.
Sometimes.
Well, I want to ask this question. I read and listen to a lot of interviews with stand-up comics and bands, and they talk about how they actually, so they go up on stage, and it's one thing to perform in front of people that love them and no matter what they do, but they actually kind of dig going out in front of people who don't know them and then fighting and winning over the crowd.
Oh yeah, that's real fun too, because if we get a crowd that hasn't seen us before, we can use all the really old material.
Yeah, we don't have to come up with nothing new. But I was going to say, we run into that a lot. We do like new people, and we like winning them over. Sometimes it's tough.
We ran into that last weekend, though.
That last weekend?
Because we did a new festival where we didn't have a huge fan base.
Right. There are times we go in and it's like, hey, new people, we're going to win them over, no problem. Fans, make it better. Last weekend, we did go to one, and we had to train the audience, is what we say. Because some people, we'll do the ratings at the beginning. We let the audience vote how dirty the show gets. And a lot of them, they're like, oh, this bit you're doing is funny as heck. Let's applaud. Let's make sure you're doing the dirtiest show possible. And then we actually start doing a dirty show, and the faces go blank because they had no idea. They're like, oh, I thought this whole thing was a bit you were doing for 10 minutes. It's like, no, we were actually making sure.
So apparently you bit.
But there's a lot of times it's good. Like when we go we'll just go do shows with stand-up comics sometimes. And since we have such a different way of doing things, we have the gimmick of dressing like pirates. We almost always win over those crowds.
The real hard part, though, is again, last weekend we had one of the days was extremely hot, and we have the oil painting crowd.
Right.
It's where it's like, you can see them. It looks like they're just melting, and they're like.
And they look like an oil painting because they don't move.
And you get all done, and they'll come up, and they've even tipped and everything like that, and they'll tell you what a great time they had in the most miserable tone. They want to find shade and something to drink, and you're nice, you're fine, but I gotta go this way, So it's like, hey, yeah, loved it. Okay, bye, guys.
That actually reminds me. I can tell a short story based. Okay, so we're in Winfield, Kansas, visiting a Ren Fair, not performing nothing. And while we're there, some of the other performers are like, you guys got to get up and do a show. We're like, no, we don't want to interfere. It's not our. They're like, no, get up and do a show. So when we get up and do it, all the other performers make a big deal out of it, bring everybody to our show. So suddenly we're feeling like rock stars. We're like, oh, we're so cool, let's do this. So we get up and we do our cleanest show probably. And as we're doing the show, we're hitting jokes that we know kill. And the other performers are laughing. But the entire audience, probably 50, 60 people, not a word, not a laugh, not a nothing. And we even start making jokes about the crowd just being totally blank, like Children of the Corn blank. And so we're a little curious. We get through the whole show, no reaction from the audience. Even when we do our last song and we know we always get applause, nothing. And I turn as we're putting up our props, and I look at the guys and I go, well, that totally bombed. And then I think it was you, Big, and pointed at it, and he goes, look. I turn, everybody in the audience has lined up in 3 single file lines, very Children of the Corn, and perfect lines, and they're just standing there. I'm thinking, oh, maybe they're waiting to exit somehow through our stage. And so I go up to the first guy and I go, hey, I'm sorry. And he goes, oh, I just want to let you know, your show was very good, and I wanted to shake your hand. Well, thank you. I shook his hand. He got out. Next guy in line comes up to me, very good show, shook my hand. That's how the whole thing went. Everybody enjoyed it, and just shook our hands one at a time.
Yeah, and I looked for a bottle of sanitizer and away the hell out. Because I was like, we gotta go, dude. That's just, yeah, no, that's
I really
creepy.
It was very weird, but it's that whole thing of trying to win over another crowd. It's like, yeah, we won them over, but we never want to do that show again. Never want to go back there. Never want to nothing. So
yeah, because that's the thing is a lot of the stuff that we do, we have fun doing it because we know we can cut up with each other. But you know, if the audience is having a really good time and you get that feedback. You know, I don't know if you want to call it energy vampire or whatever, you know, but, you know, having a little bit of what's the word I'm looking for, empath, you know, you can feel energy. And if people are really having a bad time, you're going to know it, and you're kind of going to, and everything's downhill, you know. But if everybody's having a great time, you get it all done and get out the show and go, man, what'd you think of that? That was awesome, man.
Yeah.
You know?
So is that what bring is that the draw back to the stage? I mean, what's the?
It sure as hell ain't the money.
Because you guys said you've been around for 20 plus years.
Right.
What's the?
I think it's the camaraderie, going on the road with your friends and doing stuff. It's don't get me wrong, we all fight like brothers too, but it's the funness of getting together and doing stuff. And there's a little bit of ego involved where you get on stage and people, you know, it's and getting to get out and meet, because all these, like I say, friends instead of fans. We got tons of friends that come here just to see us. We get to sit down, we get to have a beer, we get to do whatever. They'll come watch this same stupid show they've seen 20 times already and laugh.
Genuinely laugh.
Yeah.
Because they have fun with it, you know. I think another one of the things is there's a lot of, we've talked about this before, you go to certain fairs, certain places you know you're going to see certain people. Right. You know, and when you get there and you see them, it's like, the weekend's going to be good because I've seen these people. You know, and there's some of them
family.
I get to stop and I get to talk to. There was a couple times I was late to getting to shows because I was sitting talking with certain friends I don't get to see, but maybe once or twice a year. And you know, the husband of the two goes, hey, you know, he's got a show. I said, yeah, what time is it? He goes, you were supposed to be on in 2 minutes. Oh, hell. You know, my fat butt doesn't run. If I'm running, there's a problem. You should keep up. You know.
It's sad. I've got people that come watch our shows that actually know more what's going on in my life than some of my family, because they follow you on social media and they keep up, and then you'll see a cousin in Colorado you haven't seen in months, and they have no idea. You know, it's nice. It's the community, I think, that keeps us coming back. And then every once in a while that fair that pays really, really well.
Right. So you guys all have your various pirate personas. What did you do to create that person? And are you guys kind of like in uniform now, or do you guys have kind of a various costumes that you wear as your particular persona?
Actually, it's laundry day, so this is what we had.
Oh, right.
There are times where I feel more comfortable in garb anymore than I do in my regular clothes. A lot of times we just refer to it as garb.
Sure.
Because it's not like a costume. Like I went down to the Halloween store and bought my costume. It's like, no, you get all this stuff custom made, and then a lot of times it's like, oh, it's garb. I feel more comfortable in it sometimes than my regular clothes.
When we all do have a number of costume outfits, garb.
Oh yeah.
Like when we go to Comic Cons a lot, we do the Pirate Justice League. So I'm Pirate Aquaman. There's Pirate Batman. We got Pirate Shazam. He's Pirate Robin, because he's Robin
stretch,
Banks.
right?
I needed to say that before you go. Technically, Robin wasn't in the Justice League. And then we got Pirate Superman.
And of Steal Your Beer.
Like Isla down there, she'll do Wonder Woman sometimes. We'll all do different things. So Frankie's woman will do Hawk Girl. Yep. It's a lot of fun. So it's not always just pirate stuff, but people pretty much recognize. And like I say, if we do something else, people assume it's pirate. Now I can't remember what the question was.
How did you guys come across your personas?
Oh, our personas. They're extensions of us, guaranteed.
Except me, I'm not really a pervert.
We watch a lot of other performers that go like, oh, my character is this. And don't get me wrong, not every aspect of this is us, but the idea is if you can't get up there and play as an extension of you, the improv doesn't come. It's hard to do that stuff in a character. So, yeah, like we're not actually drunk all the time. People think we are. They get disappointed if they come up in our mugs full of Gatorade. But,
right. It's actually water.
Yeah, it's 100
It's 110 degrees.
You wear thigh-high boots and tell me how you feel in 8 hours.
I think, and Frankie's still been working on his name, and unfortunately we've been calling Frankie for so long, but the original idea was we tried to come up with something kind of funny, like Randy Bones. It's
Well, and one of the things we were pointing on a little while back was it needs to be something with B. Has to be.
It just kind of
Bones,
happened.
Banks, Beard, Biggin. Kind of should be a B. So otherwise it's gonna be like a Sesame. Treat me one of these things, not like the other.
I was suggesting names like Buster Hyman and
some on the.
None of them stuck.
We used to have a guy in the group.
It's only good for one show.
We had a guy in the group that had to change his name. Mac.
Oh yeah.
His name's Mac McGrog. He started out as Pat McCrotch. And we would do, every once in a while, we do kids shows. Those are the kids shows, Joe. So we would get there and I'd go, here's Pat McCrotch, and the parents right away would be like, we're going. So he had to change his name to Mac McGraw. But if I were to do it again, I would change my name. When I picked this, we looked at each other and we said, oh, this will be fun. We'll do it for like a year, and then it won't go anywhere. So I picked Little Beard because at that point in my life, I could barely grow facial hair. And now, for the last 20 years, I've had to keep this little piece of shit beard that I can't get rid of. See, at least Big, and it's not like we're going to look at him and go, you got real tiny. Because even if you lost weight, you would still be stocky, 6'2" dude.
I'm not sure.
How tall are you?
On a good day, I'm 6'4", and a bad day, I'm like 6'3".
There you go.
Some days have been pretty bad where I've been slouched, so yeah, the 6'2" might fit. That's where mine actually stuck, though, was we used to have another guy in the group, Tim. So my real name's Tim. His brother's name is Tim, Cookie. And it was Big Tim, Little Tim. Well, now his brother's put on quite a bit of pounds, but the name's already stuck, so it's not the formerly known as Little Tim.
Yeah, we just ended up calling you Biggin to make it easier.
That was part of the garrison.
Yeah,
because we were doing a show in Mansfield,
Oklahoma. No, Mansfield, Missouri.
And I was hanging out with them after hours the first night, and they have this stuff called Loki.
Alcohol.
And I'm drinking with them, and then the next day, I'm up just all chipper because, I can handle some drink. And one of the guys in the garrison goes, and there's that biggin. And I was like, okay.
There it is. Stuck.
It's stuck, so instead of Big Tim, it's biggin,
I know we've been trying to throw stuff on Frankie. Like I said, Father Guido Sarducci, I really loved. Hooker Lee's, yeah.
Still my favorite.
He won't let us keep any of them, though.
The third of the Kryptonians from Superman.
Yeah, he really looks like the third Kryptonian in Superman 2, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Wait till he puts on all black. You'll see it. If only he were that silent all the time. I can't.
I don't. Shut up.
Yeah, you don't shut up, do you?
Sorry, we're getting off topic.
No, this is what we do. Our podcast should be off topic. The podcast, really.
Oh, there you go.
That was permission to go. No.
There was this incident the other day. It involved a zebra. No, I'm just kidding. It really wasn't a zebra.
Not when it started.
When the podcast gets to bestiality, we've just gone too far.
I did not. Oh crap!
Sadly, it's not the first time.
Now I want to hear the other times. Yeah, tell us a story.
No, we could make a show out of it.
Remember, Ba means no, but Moo means maybe.
So one of the things that I noticed was I was watching yesterday's costume contest, and this kind of harks back to the improv skills. And what would you say? 70% of the people in that
it was
contest
amazing. IMC costume contests at Comic Cons everywhere. It's nothing on the fair. I think it was just they tried a different thing with costume contests this year, so it didn't go the way people are used to. But yeah, 75% of everybody did not show. So I'm on stage going, would Scott Wilson come to the stage? Nothing.
Yeah.
It started that way today too because somebody accidentally grabbed the stack of cards from yesterday, and that was on the top. So I started reading the stack from yesterday, and I was like, "No way!" But once we got through that, it all went fine. Today was much better. But yeah, I had to kind of wing it a little bit because I didn't organize the contest. You're just emceeing it, so you got to turn to the other people and go, "So where are all these people you're handing me cards for?" But Charlie from Children of Proteus, if you guys have not talked to Children of Proteus, they are epic. And he was there, and he's very good at improv, and so he kind of helps out. Even if it's something as simple as a clap or a laugh, that can make a difference for somebody trying to entertain a crowd.
Yeah, I felt really engaged actually when you were doing it, because I was watching the whole thing, I was taking pictures of it, and what we were doing is call the name, no one's out there, 3, 2, 1, everyone claps a single time, and we move on.
I actually stole that. I got to give credit. I stole that from a great MC named Peter Pixie. So,
okay.
Not that he'll listen to this, but you know.
No one listens to this, it's fine. So what was really fun about it was it almost got to the point when someone actually showed up, I was disappointed. Because I was just like, yeah, clapping, what? Yeah, clap, and I'm like, we got, okay, well, I got to do my work now.
Yeah, we played with it a little more today when I started reading that stat, where it was like I would just say like I feel like I'm getting pranked right now or something, and but yeah, and people then when somebody did show up, everybody just loved it even more. It's like, oh yeah, so that happens a lot. We've been to a lot of events where we're doing MC work or something, and they'll go, hey, we got a costume contest at 3:00. Can you MC that? Sure. And this has literally happened dozens of times. All of a sudden it'll be 2:30. You'll show up. Okay, guys. So what kind of process are you using? Who's the judges? Blah blah blah. And they'll go, we had none. We just thought you'd do it. And you're like, oh, that's not how cosplay contests work. So we would run in circles and make something happen right there. Now, the audience wouldn't know at all. Some of the contestants would figure it out, but the audience wouldn't know at all that we have just like randomly grabbed other entertainers to be judges, and we've made it all work and pulled it out of our butt real quick. But it happens a lot more than you would think.
I'm kind of curious because very, very jealous of guys. You guys go up on anyone go up on stage and stuff. I like to be in a corner. If you guys are up on stage and the crowd's not feeling it or whatever, do you guys have like certain plan?
Yeah, we walk off stage and leave. Screw them guys.
You can feel that. You can feel, again, back to that energy thing. You can feel that on stage with the group because you're going to know, if things are off and things just aren't hitting, And it's like, okay, well, so let's just get through this as quickly and as painlessly as we can and just get the heck out of here, And sometimes it takes a little bit, and you're doing it. It's like you're trying to get done. And then people show up and they start engaging, interacting, and then, like he said, you get that one or two people that get it and start laughing, and it kind of spreads.
Laughter is contagious.
And then there it goes. So then it's like, okay, we can do the show and finish it properly instead of, yeah, we've been to ScallyWags, see you later, bye.
So it's like it's pure instinctual.
Well, sometimes you might look at the crowd and go, okay, do they want it a little dirtier? Yeah. So you might try to push it that direction and find out, is that working? Or does it need to be cleaner?
Well, and we had somewhere, last week is a great example. We were doing a Ren Fair. We do our pirate dating game. I screwed up the show by picking a drunk girl from the audience to be one of the contestants. And it wasn't so much her, but the folks that she was with, they all were just drunk talking. They had no idea that we'd do a setup for a joke and then there's delivery and that kind of stuff. We'd do the setup for the joke and they would be confused immediately. Because at that point, unless you just looked at them and said the word fart and they giggle, they're not getting it. So at that point, I knew it was going rough. I can look at the guys, they're giving me eye contact. So what I did is I said, hey, we're going to do a big bonus question in this game show we're doing. And so they knew right where I was going. We finished the show. And then once we did, then we finished it with some songs because we could read the audience and tell that's the route we needed to go.
Right, okay.
Doesn't always work, but sometimes it does. What we almost suffer from worse is when we do get that feedback Megan was talking about, we tend to keep going then. It's like, oh, one more. We'll keep going. Next thing you know, the 30-minute show we're doing is 45 minutes. The next act is standing next to us going, let's go. And when they're feeding off you, it's easy to just keep going.
We have one show that typically it can last about 20 minutes, just going through, not an ad lib or anything like that. Just go through the show. We finished that one in 12 minutes one time because it was really bad.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so it was just God, finished. And then we've had one time where everything was just hit, and it was an hour. Yeah. And fortunately, one of the other acts that was coming up after us, they knew that, and they're like,
just keep going, yeah. And like Fishbones and Scurvy, who just walked up and tried to screw up our podcast here.
He's actually letting us know food is on the reservations.
They're good about that. They're the kind of group we can just jump on stage and do stuff with. Judas and Magnolia here. They're okay. They're okay.
What are you talking about? Those guys are assholes.
In fairness, the first part of the interview, that's what we were saying. But I ain't got the balls to say it to your face. For those listening to the podcast, we just got joined by Judas and Magnolia.
Man, I can retire. You can just
That's a nice way of saying you talk too much.
But speaking of talking too much, I feel like we could sit and talk to you guys for hours. But you guys have the interview reservations. We have our next interview to do. So we got to let you go. Adam, do you have any final questions for them?
No, I just appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
Thank you guys for joining us.
And hopefully we didn't ask you the same boring questions.
So where's this damn beer there?
No, that's the only way we were quick-witted enough to give answers. They were the same boring questions. If we actually had to think about it.
I thought I at least had one.
No. They weren't. At least you didn't look at us and go, so what do you think of Johnny Depp? So we're good.
Well, I crossed that off.
Thank you.
So how do we and people listening at home find out more about the ScallyWags?
PirateComedy.com.
There come wanted posters.
Right.
I think there's a list on the internet.
Post office wall.
Nope. Pirate.comedy.com is our website. You can catch us on most social media. Just look up the ScallyWags Pirate Comedy Show. Even though we've been around for 20 years, if you look up the ScallyWags, there's every 2 years a new punk band comes out called the ScallyWags. But look up the ScallyWags Pirate Comedy Show. Biggin's got business cards. Boy, he's professional.
Ooh, fancy.
Also, you can catch us doing lots of other stuff, lots of other events. We do a podcast called the Drunken Pirate Podcast, where we get together, we drink, and just answer questions on the internet. We also have a podcast called Concast, Concast, where we go to conventions, we interview people, we talk comic books, we talk geeky trivia, that kind of stuff, because we're nerds. And I think that's it. I think that's the best way to get a hold of us. Or drive through Kansas. That'll be worth it.
You could most of the time catch us at our home fair.
Yeah, you can catch us at our home fairs like Great Plains, Wichita. We do St. Louis Ren Fair. We're on the road a lot. We do about 35 shows a year, depending on what it is. But
okay, great. And for your podcast, where do they find your podcast at?
On the internet. I don't know.
Facebook at Concast.
Okay.
And we got concastpodcast.com.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you guys very much. I hope you enjoy the rest of your rest of the weekend.
No, this was the highlight. The rest is going to suck.
Hey,
well, the best thing about this was it was in an AC building.
Yes.
With like the strongest AC here.
I like this. All right, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Whenever you're ready, sir.
Okay, great. All right, and here we are back from the latest edit from Adam. We are here with Judas and Magnolia from Judas and Magnolia's Daring Escapes.
You got it. That's the correct name, yeah.
Perfect. So one of the things we want to talk about is who are Judas and Magnolia and how did you guys come to be?
That's a great question. Well, we're a husband and wife team of award-winning escape artists. At this point, we've performed all over the United States and in North Africa. And pretty soon we'll be going over to Istanbul to do some shows in December.
Wow, that's...
Sorry. But, and like, with that, performing from different crowds in the United States and in North Africa, I'm not sure, is it different type of crowds? Is it, you have to...
Well, over here we mostly perform for festivals, Renaissance fairs, steampunk festivals. Over there we're performing for, say, tourist hotels.
Oh, okay.
So it's not a thematic event. Instead, it's just a show for a group of people who have paid to, say, be at a hotel. We might perform on the roof of the hotel for the guests that are staying there.
Okay. And how did you guys come to perform in North Africa? That's not something you hear in the Midwest very often.
Right. Well, we wanted to visit that part of the world, and it's nice if you can book something while you're over there. So we reached out to hotel owners to see if there's anybody over there who'd like a show.
A bit of a working vacation, then.
Right.
All right, fantastic. And how did that show go? You guys have a good time?
Yeah, well, and I think for
For me, part of what was so fun about that was people were so excited that we actually did some teaching as well. So so we just did a juggling show, and then people are like, I want to know how to juggle, and that's a beautiful thing when you can kind of show off the things that are exciting to you, and other people get just as excited, and want to be in it with you. So for me, that was really fun, and so I'd say it went well. If people like it enough to say, teach me how to juggle, and we're always happy to do that. So, anything else, Darren?
Yeah, it was an enjoyable experience. We'd do it again. I really liked having the pyramids as a backdrop. That was a nice experience.
So, did you do the same kind of tricks that we saw this year or last year over there, or did you create something that was more like Northern Africa themed?
No, over there we did juggling shows. Okay. It's hard for us to bring our boxes and our handcuffs and our chains over there.
Professor, you may have some questions.
Well, you could probably put them in stowed luggage and not have a problem, but it weighs everything down, and the costs are really expensive to ship a package over there, and it would be impossible for us to ship our big boxes over. So instead we bring juggling equipment. We do juggling shows.
Right. So speaking of your shows, Magnolia is a damage control podcasting alumni. She was here last year. She was kind enough to be on our show. And last year you guys did this really cool box on fire escape. I'm sure it's not the technical term, but
that's what we call it.
And this year I caught you guys doing Metamorphosis yesterday, and I have to say that was incredible. It was a blink and you missed it. So fast, so fluid. It was beautiful.
Thank you. So we brought that, the Metamorphosis, because in 1914, Harry and his wife Bess Houdini performed the Metamorphosis here in Hannibal, Missouri, at the Park Opera House. So we wanted to, a bit over 100 years later, bring the same escape, the Metamorphosis, and perform it for this steampunk event.
Yeah, and it was fantastic. And I think I saw on your Facebook that you guys were trying to break his record.
Oh, well, Harry and his wife, they promoted the show that they would change places in the twinkle of an eye, 3 seconds. When Magnolia and I get timed, we do the change in 2 seconds. So we beat Harry and Bess by 1 second.
That is incredible. Is there a world record that you can apply for with that? Because that seems something that...
I don't think it's a world record. There are other magicians who do it faster. If you want to Google something that's really impressive, look up the Pendragon's Metamorphosis. Okay. You'll see it in a breathtaking short amount of time. If you thought ours was quick, see the Pendragon's.
Okay. Yeah, I was actually trying to... We're doing a video package this year, and I was actually trying to catch that on camera, and by the time that I got in frame and hit the record button, it was done, and I'm like, oh, I missed it.
Well, you've still got one more chance. We're going to do it again tomorrow. So if you're here tomorrow, come on by. We'll be on that same stage, and so you can catch it again.
All right, perfect.
I've got a program right here. I think it's 11 o'clock.
I think she's right. I believe it's 11 o'clock.
Oh, yeah. Okay, definitely. Yeah, absolutely.
11 a.m.
So it looked like you're debuting a couple of other new shows this year as well. One that you had labeled as mind reading and a seance.
Right. So we're doing a couple.
We've got a kid trolling us over here. Sorry, guys.
So we've got a couple of new shows. We have a mind reading show that we titled Magnolia Knows All. It's a throwback to the Victorian era mind reading shows. They were all the rage. And what we do is we start out by doing a book test. More or less a random word is chosen by the audience from a set of 3 large books. And Magnolia then uses her mental vibrations, as we call them, to find out which word has been chosen. And then we systematically, one at a time, read the minds of each and every person in the audience.
That sounds fantastic. Now, since you're using everyone in the crowd, obviously there's no crowd complaints. That I know has kind of been frowned upon for those kind of shows. But how did you come across and develop the show? How did you come into that?
Right, so there was a couple of Australians back in about 1910 called the Peddingtons. They used to have a mind reading show that was on the BBC. And really enjoy their stuff. In fact, for many, many years it was a mystery, even to magicians, how a lot of their illusions were performed. we get a lot of inspiration from their stuff and like to bring it back out.
Yeah, so we're going to leave a little bit of an editing pause right here. You're good? You got something? All right, cool. All right, so mind reading, we were talking about
the Peddingtons. It was a husband and wife team.
Okay.
Magicians took a long time to figure out how it was done because the mentalism wasn't created out of the normal magic tricks. So mentalism evolved out of the sort of the spiritualist movement. But the Peddingtons used a different route. In World War II, Peddington, the husband, was a prisoner of war, and he was in charge of sort of secret information in one of the camps, and he invented a number of codes that he would pass information from himself to other people in the camps that couldn't be detected by the guards. So he sort of simultaneously invented a form of mentalism that most magicians were unaware of. That remained a secret up until about 5 years ago. It turned out that one of the people that he used to help me with the show, they were under strict instructions not to write things down. Well, this person happened to write something down and kind of had it in his closet. Well, he passed away long ago. His grandchildren inherited the house and ended up with his notebook. And after flipping through his notebook, sort of rediscovered the lost secrets of the Peddingtons. So now, to the magic community, it's a treasure trove of sort of unexplored magical devices and ideas.
That's the kind of thing that you only find in like a book or a movie. That is so interesting that is a real life thing.
Now, the mentalism we were using here at the festival happened to be the very same mentalism that Harry Houdini used, both the word test and the reading the minds of the audience.
And I have to say that of all the magic tricks, and I'm a huge magic buff as well. One of my favorite shows is the Penn and Teller show that's on right now. And the mentalism one is always, their tricks are always the one that fool me the worst.
Really?
And they always get it, and I'm like, how did you write that guy's driver's license number down? So those are always so fascinating to watch. How did you, I've noticed that with your performances, you have, they always seem to have like some sort of story built into the performance. And how did you build the story behind the mind reading performance?
Right. So we generally build stories because magic asks the audience to do something weird. Escapology and other magic. It asks an audience to, on one hand, suspend disbelief that you do this every day and pretend that they're surprised that it happens. And when it comes to escapology, you're asking them not to suspend disbelief so much that they call the police because they think you're in danger. So you're asking them to walk a weird line. We try to get rid of that line by telling stories. So we take the focus off of the magic or the escape, and we make it just part of a narrative that you can enjoy the story, you can go along with the story, and you don't have to worry about, oh, they've done this before, or they might get hurt. It becomes a story. So that's the reason we involve the stories.
Okay. And what kind of process do you use to create those stories? Does it just start with like a single idea, or is there like which comes first? Does the magic come first, or does the story come first?
Oh, that's really hard to say. Generally, there's one illusion that we might want to do, and then a story will craft upon that. But we have to have other smaller tricks to go in, other little bits of something that we might want to do. So they then fill in the pieces. So it might be major illusions, story, then smaller bits. Our shows are also usually broken up into 3 parts, as I think of them when I'm writing them. There's the crowd gathering portion, where I do something that might be juggling swords or a big flaming battle axe. It's pretty disconnected from the rest of the show. It's really just a big audience build-up section where I get people to hoot and holler. Then there's the story where the magic takes place. And the last section is sort of the hat line, where we talk to people and just to sort of pass the hat and tell some jokes. It's also disconnected from the story. So we have it in 3 different sections. And when writing, I sort of time out each of those sections and I'm aware that they're each really important to make the show work.
Okay.
I think I also want to just add at least part of my process when we're collaborating is that for me, I'll say, he'll kind of be saying, well, and then I think we can do this, and then you do this, and I'll go, you know what I've been wanting to do? I saw this one thing, and I love Lucy, and I've been wanting to do this, you know. And so a lot of it for me is inspiration, you know, and just to go back to something we were talking about earlier, we were talking about the Pendragon escape, or the metamorphosis that the Pendragons do. And it's that kind of stuff that for me, I feel like I really immerse myself in studying people that I admire, you know, whether it's the Pendragons, whether it's Lucille Ball, or Carol Burnett, or Bette Midler, or the Marx Brothers, or Charlie Chaplin, you know. Sometimes they're just classic gags, or, you know, sometimes it's a facial expression, or sometimes it's the way someone walks, or, you know, that kind of stuff that I'll think, you know, I would really like to do something like this, and it would be perfect in this spot right here, you know. And so, and I like to think that that's kind of where some of our charm comes from. It's not just the story, but the character, you know, that character development. You know, there's a certain kind of voice that I use when I'm on stage, and it's way up here, you know, and you know, but I love it because, and to go back, I already mentioned Lucille Ball, but when she sings, if you've ever watched an I Love Lucy episode, and she sings like that, you know, and it's silly, and it's not actually her real singing voice, but it's so funny, you know, when I can incorporate that in my character. Magnolia has an awful voice on stage. It's awful. It's grating. I literally, when we start a festival, I will go introduce myself to the vendors around us, and I'll say, I apologize in advance for you having to listen to my screeching voice. But, you know, but then the funny thing is, we can kind of pull a Harpo move, if you're familiar with Marx Brothers. So Harpo is this just absurd, kooky character, and he'll be doing something ridiculous, and then he'll stop, and he'll do this amazing show of skill. If you've seen Marx Brothers, you know that he actually plays the harp very well. It's very impressive. And so we'll do a similar thing where I'll just be this absurd character on stage, and then I'll stop, and I'll actually sing a beautiful song because I've been classically trained as a vocal performer. But you wouldn't know that from my character speaking like this, you know. But I'll stop, and I'll take a little harpo moment, and then we'll get back to the zany story, you know. And so for me, that's a big part of the collaboration process. Is, you know, we'll kind of ping pong off of each other, and we've kind of got a basic idea of a story and plot line, but then we'll go, why don't we just add in this little gem, you know? So that's a big part of it for me.
Something else we try to do is have true character development. And we don't see this very often at festivals. Sometimes you might see a story or see something take place on stage, but you don't see true character development among the people taking place on stage. So we try to focus on having true character development of especially the female character, because that just never happens on stage at a Renaissance festival or at a Steampunk festival. You never see the female character evolve into something else.
I think it could also be argued you don't see it a lot on film or in literature. Keep going.
So we make sure that Magnolia's character might start out as a ditzy assistant, but by the end she's definitely running the show. And there's a lot of development for this character, from starting out as the assistant who went on to stage late into the kind of pirate queen who's like managing everything and who's in control of the audience.
Absolutely, that is a really compelling part from watching the Box Escape last year and the Metamorphosis this year, was how involved the assistant, air quotes, was in it. And I especially like the reluctant escape artist character.
Yes.
When you're creating these kind of characters and personas, what inspiration do you draw from? Like, where does Magnolia come from? Where does Judas come from?
I already mentioned a few of mine, so I'll let you.
Right. So the character Judas. So the name first just came because I was like, well, what's a name people are going to remember? And nobody ever forgets whenever I tell them my character's name is Judas. Nobody ever comes up to me again and says, who are you again? Never happens. Never happens. So I just wanted a really striking, memorable name. So we chose Judas, and it's really worked out well. And now for the character, like how it comes about, sometimes I think back to myself, I'm like, what would a 10-year-old me like? And whatever I think 10-year-old me would like, we put it on stage. I feel like a lot of our shows, I want to connect to families. I feel like there's a lot of body humor at festivals. And I don't want that. I mean, not that I don't want that. There's a place for that. I don't want our show to be that. I want our show to be compelling, high energy, entertaining, but also accessible to the whole family, without a worry that you're going to encounter something that's going to give you an uncomfortable day.
I think also I just want to throw out, and darling, if I'm off base here, I'll jump in, but when you think of the name Judas, there's definitely a certain feel that goes with that. Mm-hmm. And if you pay attention to the actual stories that we're telling, he's not necessarily the hero.
Right. So I feel like our stories are generally pretty macabre, and I feel like sometimes the audience doesn't understand that the boat was taken over by pirates and everybody was murdered, and I might happen to get out of this burning box, but I'm probably still going to die. Like, these are very macabre stories where everybody dies and horrible things happen, but we do it while we dance on stage and tell jokes in a family-friendly manner.
Yeah. And so just putting that out there, he's, this character is not necessarily a hero, but I think in a lot of ways he is an everyman. I think he is relatable, because everyone's had some crazy things go wrong. Everyone's had that day or that situation where you're like, this is not my day. This is not my day. I feel like the world is on fire, falling down around me. The sky is falling, right? And so it's relatable because sometimes all you can do is survive. Sometimes all you can do is just try to put on a smile and get through it, And that's, the show is that. It's, we got through this thing, against all the odds. Against his, his kooky assistant, adding ropes and adding chains and adding thumb cuffs, one thing after another, he still gets out of it. And so even though there's generally a conflict between our characters there's generally some tension between us, at the end, even though the crowd was like, yeah, put him on the chains, at the end, they're still clapping that he got out of it.
I really enjoy seeing the humanity of people, especially in the box that gets set on fire show, because partly through the box burning, I get out of the restraints and I can see out holes. And I oftentimes reach out with a set of keys to unlock the box, and I drop the keys. And a good 1 out of 10 shows, there's a child who will rush towards the stage to hand me the keys. And it says something very good about humanity, because it's a very intimidating thing to get on stage, especially to run towards a box that's on fire. But about 1 in 10 shows, a child will jump up and run to hand me the keys to make sure I get out of this box.
That is a really heartwarming moment, especially when you don't know. Like, there's so many things that can go wrong in those types of escapes. I'm sure you're a professional, but it only takes one thing to go wrong, and then it's game over, right? So, for some of the more dangerous ones, so those kind of things are like, is that part of the show, or is that something that is
yeah? So escapology is an interesting item. I like to tell people it's probably 1/3 magic, a third sort of master a mechanism, just an understanding how physical systems work, and for your last third, it's just sort of a daredevil nature. Like, the fire's real and everything's real. It's not illusionary. There's not cold fire I can buy from Home Depot. When things are really on fire. When I'm underwater, I'm really underwater. Like, it's an interesting layered cake there.
Yeah, definitely. And on that kind of daredevil aspect, have you ever had something that went very, very poorly that was dangerous?
Yeah, so there was one time in St. Louis where it wasn't in front of an audience. It was during a rehearsal at a venue, a dress rehearsal. A prop broke, and I ended up with a rope tied around my neck. Oh, no. And I get lifted up into the air, And happened to the producer of the show was there. He's watching the act. He jumps up and he cuts down the rope. So I fall back down to the stage, and I fall down to my feet. I don't fall over. He asks me if I'm okay, and I say, "Oh yeah, I'm okay." And it becomes clear pretty quick that I'm not, because I don't know who anybody in the building is, nor where I am, nor what we were doing. And I ended up with the memory of a goldfish for about 24 hours. About every 15 minutes, my memory would reset. And I would wonder where I was again and who I was and what was going on. And I am told, and I sort of recall this, as the only person I remember in the whole world was Magnolia. I took out my cell phone and I searched through and I let her know something happened. She asked what, and I say, I don't know, I'm not sure, but I know something happened and you need to come down here. And about that same time, the producer was calling an ambulance because he realized something was wrong as well, and but I didn't know who anybody else in the room was. There were people I'd worked with for years.
Oh, that's terrifying. Wow.
It was. And, part of professionalism is putting as many stopgaps as you can in place. Part of it is rehearsing, being confident in your skills, doing your research and your study. But again, because of the nature of what we do, things do go wrong. And you do your best. Always. You do your best, and that's all you can do. And you learn, and you move forward, and you help out other people, other performers, as best you can, and try to pay it forward. And at the end of the day, we love what we do, despite the risk.
It reminds me of a story about Harry Houdini. So it's not just us that gets hurt; everybody gets hurt. It's an art form that has some danger in it. There's stories about Harry Houdini being bound in chains and handcuffs, and oftentimes he would do his under the veil of secrecy. So he would get handcuffed and wrapped in chains, and he would sort of go into a closet or a box. Then he would emerge free. There were several stories of him when he would emerge free. Sometimes when the chains were in a certain way or the handcuffs were too tight or something he couldn't get out, he would come out a bloody mess. He would literally rip like patches of flesh out of himself to make space for the chains to come off.
And on that same note, a circus friend of ours, just a few years ago, old-fashioned Italian family circus, and circus is their life. It is what they do. It's not just their job; it's their life.
I think it's 3 generations they've performed in the circus.
Oh, at least. And he was doing an act that he's done for years and years and years, and it was a static trapeze act. And so he's spinning over and over and over, and he falls. And there's not a net.
He's just from the top of a circus tent.
From the top of the tent. And he's very badly injured and has brain damage and will never be the same. But he went back to work, and the quote that I remember him saying in an interview was, "Well, what do you expect me to do? Go be a construction worker?" Which is to say, this is our life. This is what we do. We don't just pick a different profession. This is what we do. It's in our blood. And so he went back to circus. And he does that same act. He got back on that trapeze, and he does it again to the applause of children and families, men and women, all over the United States, all over the world, and bringing smiles to people all over the world, despite your difficulties and your personal struggles and what you've been through. That's a beautiful thing, and that's what we do.
That is.
Talk about traveling like you were just talking about, and you guys traveling all over the United States and North Africa. Do you see magic perceived, magic's perceived in the East Coast in a different way than some areas?
I don't know about. Yeah, I don't know about jaded towards magic. I do find that different audiences in different parts of the country react differently to, say, different jokes or different lines. One of the lines I like to use when I'm interacting with audience members in the lane to draw them towards my show, if I see a family walking around, I might say, "You good people, you look like the kind of people who'd like to see something dangerous." And in most places, people go, "Yes, what do you have?" When I do that in Nebraska, people say, "No," and walk away.
They walk away. True story.
I just got done doing a show in Utah, and I love the audience that's in Utah, but I noticed that if there's any lines that are even able to be construed as body, there's no laughter.
Oh, right. Well, okay, that brings another good point. I've been kind of asking everyone who's been interviewed, when you're up on stage, I'm sure magic's probably less improvisational, or at least the trick part. But when do you guys feel the crowd and be like you just said, I don't know, they don't really feel this.
Yeah.
As you guys been working so long together, do you two we need to do this? I mean, can you feel the crowd, or does your act allow that to?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we encourage the crowd to yell at us as part of our act. We encourage the interaction. We let them know that we can see them and they can see us. We talk about participation. So the whole show runs off the fact that the audience is yelling at us and we can hear them and we're yelling back at the audience. So we just work to respond to whatever the audience says. And there are some times of day we've even noticed that the audience says less. Generally around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, our audience is what we call the mid-afternoon slump. And sometimes we'll just kind of stop and say, "Listen, guys, you're tired, we're tired. This is what we call the mid-afternoon slump." And we'll kind of do a little exercise to get people out of the slump. But I mean, it's a true conversation back and forth. We have some stock lines that we might say to kids if they're being truly obnoxious. But otherwise, we just sort of flow with whatever people say, and we yell back from the stage at them if they yell something at us, and we try to have a running conversation. We aim to make contact with each and every person in our audience, at least eye contact, maybe a wink, something said. We aim to in some way be with each person.
Okay, now I know you guys probably where you guys go on, so I know you guys probably love a crowd is just in the beginning, but do you guys really dig getting on there and you got a bunch of dated high school kids and you're fighting on them over, and then you guys really dig there, and you just want to go out there and you don't want to have to deal with I don't, for someone who doesn't go up on stage, because I'm extremely shy, so I'm very jealous of the stuff you guys do. Which do you prefer both, or how does it?
So your question just, what it brings up for me is that sometimes we'll get these folks, or, again, regional variations, it might even feel like the whole crowd, they're just sitting there, they're just looking at us, they're not really giving me a whole lot of energy, not so much on the facial expressions. And I swear it's the people often who look like they're having the grumpiest situation who will come up after the show. They'll wait in this long line because I've got people who want to take photos and, want to give me hugs or want to tell me their pirate puns or, whatever. And they'll wait and they'll come up and they'll say, "That was the best show I've seen all year." Or, whatever. "I loved your show." And it's and they're not smiling. Or, that was the funniest thing I've seen. And we hear this from other acts. I'm thinking of some of our good friends who, there's one festival they do every year. And it's up north, and they say these folks just, when they're on stage, they're not getting anything. There's nothing there. And this one guy comes up and he goes, "That was the funniest thing I've ever seen. I almost laughed." But what it reminds me is that, we are all so different. We are all so different. And so other people, some of my fans are not going to relate in the same way I relate. They're not going to communicate in the same way I do. They don't have the same body language that I do. And that's okay. And what a beautiful thing, because it takes all types, right? It takes all types. So it just reminds me to stay humble and keep an open mind and an open heart.
Absolutely.
You guys have been talking a lot. You've noticed, you guys kind of really dig the history of magic rather than just. Do you? I mean, is that like a big interest for you guys? You guys really research it? I mean, I find every fact you throw out there, I found beyond interest.
Right, well, there's a deep golden history there, so it should be explored. I mean, it's a treasure trove, and there's no need to reinvent the wheel. That's really what it is. There's a lot of great magicians who's come before us, so we should really look at what they did. Because if their names are remembered, they probably did something right. So we should learn from that and do it.
Do you find that as like a research, like a hobby for you, researching the history of it? Do you use that inspire you guys in your creation of your act, or is it just more of knowledge that you guys?
To me, it's part of the job. You know, it's not like a side hobby. It's part of the work.
Oh, okay. Well, all right, it's part of the work, because it would be awfully embarrassing if somebody walked up and started talking to me about Houdini and I didn't know who the guy was. So I've got to have some answers here to give them when they come up and ask me things.
I feel like that happens to Adam on the podcast. Hey, do you know this director? Everyone's, no. Well, okay, well, this guy.
Yeah, you guys have been hanging all the time.
Under the bus.
We're being a cinema podcast. How do you guys feel about magic being portrayed in cinema?
So we get compared to The Prestige a lot, just by the nature of our acts. So I think that's one that like catches our eye, and I enjoy that movie. I think it's a pretty good one. I don't know of many instances recently of magic being portrayed, but I also don't watch a lot of pop culture, tell you the truth.
Right, sure.
We're like Three Stooges fans and Marx Brothers fans.
Right.
You know, I mean, it's funny because I feel like with what we do, you know, I really consider ourselves variety artists, and so we've got a foot just in so many worlds. There's theater, there's magic, there's circus, there's just the Renaissance Festival circuit that's been going on for 30, 40 years. Like, that's got its own kind of subculture, you know, situation. So there's, you know, the vocal performance, there's acting. I mean, there's so many things to research and to be inspired by, and I mean, you know, something that when people ask, you know, what do you do? And then, you know, I give my little synopsis and they say, well, that sounds really interesting. And I say, well, it keeps us entertained. And, you know, hopefully we entertain other people too.
So that brings me to a question. So you talk about all these different places you go, the Steampunk, the Renaissance festivals. Do the characters of Judas and Magnolia, do they change based off the festival, or are you guys always this kind of steampunk, sky pirate type character?
Yeah, I would say our character doesn't change. The hat we put on the volunteer changes.
Okay.
At a Renaissance festival, it might be a tricorn hat. At a Steampunk festival, it might be a top hat. Our characters stay the same. The situation we're in changes to meet the theme of the festival.
Okay. So we discussed a lot of things, but one of the things that we haven't talked about is one of your new tricks. You guys have a seance show.
Right.
What kind of things can we expect from that? Because I'm like I said, I'm very into magic, but that one, I'm not sure what that is.
So it's a theatrical seance. By that, we mean we reenact a seance that you would have encountered during the mid-1800s, both in style and technique. So you could expect to walk into our show and see and feel the same things you would have saw and felt at a Victorian seance chamber. We want to be very clear that we're magicians, so everything is illusion. But they were pretty much magicians as well, so everything that was happening in those seance chambers was illusion. We're just upfront about it, because we don't want to mislead anybody. We want them to be clear that they're not having a legitimate spiritual experience. They're being manipulated by a magician. And although it feels very real, and the experience is very convincing, that it appears that they are speaking with spirits, they're not. And we find it important to let our audience know that beforehand, because we don't want them to be taken advantage of. We would hate a situation to happen where it's unclear that what we did was magic, so it opens them up to be taken advantage of by somebody else who has nefarious intentions.
Absolutely. And how did you guys come across? How did you guys come up to the show? Like, how did you decide to start writing it and come up with the tricks involved inside?
Well, the tricks involved inside they've been around forever. We just looked at what the Victorian mediums were doing, and we did them because they were magic tricks. So we do things such as table tipping. It's where our seance participants are around a table. We chant, and the table starts to move and tilt around, and a spirit, air quotes, is possessing the table, and it starts to answer questions as it moves around. Then we move into something called glass moving. It was a Victorian predecessor to the Ouija board. More or less, there's a wine glass that's upside down on the table with lettered cards around the perimeter. Everybody touches the wine glass, and it moves around to answer questions. The finale of the show then takes place in absolute darkness, where everybody's holding hands around the table and everybody's feet are connected. And stuff starts to happen in the seance chamber. Say a music box might start to wind up and float around, or people will report feeling fingers running through their hair when we're the only ones in the chamber and everybody's holding hands.
And I want to be clear that although when we read about some of the things that spiritualist mediums were doing in the late 1800s, early 1900s, we read about it and we go, that sounds awful hokey. I guarantee you, it is so moving when we get people in our shows. We were doing one last night. A woman literally started crying. She started crying. Yes.
It's hard to imagine, but if you will, a magic show where you can bring adults to tears. And that's the magic inside the seance chamber.
It is that compelling, and it is especially for that reason that we feel an obligation to our audience to be very clear and upfront. We are magicians and illusionists. What just happened was a magic show. Remember this as you move forward.
Because I would really hate for somebody to view our show, be convinced by it, and then walk down the street and there be another medium that does the same tricks but uses them to convince to change grandmother's will or something like that. So we need to protect people from sort of no goodness in that way by letting them know that we're magicians, this was illusion. If you encounter this somewhere else, remember, you saw it before and it was an illusion.
That's kind of really cool because you were talking about doing Harry Houdini's metamorphosis. He very famously went around debunking.
He did. He had a very interesting seance show, in fact. As part of his debunking process, he would travel small town to small town, and he would hold shows in sort of big meeting halls. And what he would do, when he was an escape artist, he would call people on stage that were more or less the judges from the community, and they would make sure all the locks were real and all the chains were real. During his seance show, he did something very similar. He would call people up from the audience, and he would sit them around a table, and he would put blackout hoods on them, so they couldn't see what was going on. And then he would sit down
everyone in the audience could.
The lights were up, everybody in the audience could see clearly. And then he would sit down with them and hold hands and conduct a seance. The audience could see that he was slipping the restraints and doing all kinds of things, ringing bells, but the people that were on the stage with him, the judges, could not because of the blackout hoods. And then at the end, he would, in the seance, unhood everybody and ask the judges, did I ever let go of your hand? And all kinds of other questions. And the judges would swear, no, it was impossible. Nobody else was up here with us. It was just you and us. We had your hands held the entire time. It had to have been spirits. And then he would turn to the audience. They got to see everything. They got to see him ring bells with his feet and slip the restraints. And he would ask them, did I slip out of his restraints? And the whole audience would say, yes.
So that's how he did it. And it's funny because some people do know that Houdini was, very big into debunking the spiritualists during his later years. But not a lot of people are familiar with the fact that Houdini conducted these seances as a way to debunk spiritualists.
He also really, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't he really want it to be true?
He did.
Because he wanted to speak with his mother.
That's exactly it, yeah. He wanted to speak with his mother. And the story goes that his mother passed away, he was heartbroken, he attended several seances. And as he attended them, he started to notice things that he recognized from magic that it appeared that the illusionists, that the mediums were doing. And one of them was the straw that broke the camel's back. The medium reported that his mother said something about, in Jesus' name. Well, Houdini and his mother, they're Jewish. His father was a rabbi. His mother would not say in Jesus' name. And it was sort of the straw that broke the camel's back. Houdini was like, this is fraudulent. You're using my emotions to get money. I'm going to go on a crusade to end you.
Right, because it wasn't so much, it was more of like, I guess it was more like he really, instead of just being that, like, you're ruining this is my livelihood, it's more like, I really want you guys to be real, and I'm holding you up to a certain standard.
Well, I wanted you to be real, and you weren't, is the thing. Like, you weren't, and now I realize that you're abusing people's trust.
Yeah.
But you've got to see something else. There's another side to Houdini. Like, this is sort of this heroic view of him that he did this. There's another side to this whole thing. So Houdini...
vindictive.
Well, a little vindictive. Well, it's not just that. It's not just that. So Houdini lived at an interesting age. He lived at the end of vaudeville and the rise of movies. Houdini was having a problem. Vaudeville was ending, and he was having a hard time transitioning into film. He had to find another way to keep his name in the public eye and the spotlight and continue to earn money. And then he started the crusade against spiritualists.
Because him and Sir Arthur Conan Doyle had a world-renowned
right. So you can see him as either a hero that wanted a crusade, or you could see him as he was his entire life, a good businessman and a self-promoter that found a niche that he could promote himself as the anti-spiritualist crusader. So there's sort of two different ways to view him.
And, you know, like anyone, like any story, there's probably truth to all sides.
Because it's kind of funny because Sir Arthur Conan Doyle is famous for being a spiritualist, but he's also famous for creating the most famous atheist in Sherlock.
Right.
Well, and so just context to that as well, and this is part of the larger context of the spiritualist movement, particularly in America, but in Europe as well. People were wanting to connect with loved ones because mid-1800s America, Civil War, right? You start to get towards the turn of the century, throughout the entire world, World War I. The war to end all wars. A few years later, World War II, you know, and people are losing not just their husbands, their brothers, they're losing their children, you know, their sons. And at that time, people, I mean, the whole world was hurting. The whole country, the whole world was really in this space of just this immense loss. And can you blame people for wanting to connect with those loved ones that they just lost?
But it's not just the loss. That was an interesting age. It was kind of the blossoming of industrialism. There were all these new technologies and new scientific discoveries. You had the radio and the telephone. You had new ways to communicate and connect. And it just made sense to people that were making these new discoveries. What if we discovered a way that we could connect with our loved ones? It just sort of fit into this narrative of the age of discovery and connection and new technologies. So it wasn't hard for people to swallow. They wanted it because of loss, and they could fit it into this kind of this changing world that they had found themselves in.
So we don't want to take all of your afternoon. Thank you so much for being on the
Yeah, you guys always promise us 20 minutes, and we end up losing you guys.
Yeah, we're happy to chat. It's really nothing.
Because I could ask you about it. So you guys, your inspiration was the Australian husband and wife team.
Yeah, the Peddingtons.
Mm-hmm. Do you guys have any recommendations for anyone listening? Besides watching you guys, do you guys have any recommendations?
Well, I mean, yeah, so a list of recommendations. If you're interested in that book on the Peddingtons, I think it's The Peddingtons Revealed is a good one. It goes over a lot of the stuff that was kind of recently discovered for them.
Now, was that stuff made public?
Yeah, it was made public. Once that notebook was found, I think the grandson, perhaps, of the person who had the notebook published it. So you can find a lot of those secrets now if you buy sort of this book. So if you're interested in that, I recommend checking out The Peddingtons Revealed. it has a lot of great magic history as well. So if you want to follow up on the magic history portion, or maybe even sort of war history, if you want to hear about this, how they transmitted secrets within prisoners of war camps, and that's covered as well.
Because magicians and special effects artists have a big history with the military.
Right. Go ahead.
Oh, just someone had mentioned Penn and Teller before, and I want to acknowledge that we definitely draw inspiration from Penn and Teller. Particularly, again, I'll touch on a character, not just character development, but the way that the characters on stage are relating to one another. You know, that's been a great inspiration for us, and obviously they've done a lot in the magic community. So, you know, anything of theirs, you had mentioned their latest show, Fool Us, very accessible online, very easy to find. They've got lots of material.
Right.
So, I was just going to ask, do you guys have any questions for us before we hit the closing here?
Oh, yeah. What other events are you guys doing? Where else are y'all going to be?
That is a great question. Adam?
This is one of those thrown under the bus situations we were talking about a moment ago.
I'm pretty comfortable.
He's learning to get comfy.
Whatever events we can get to.
Yeah, we're pretty. We have our schedule is one of those things that's kind of last minute. We record every Sunday at my business, and when we hit these kind of events, we kind of line up when we can. I can promise you, we'll be here next year for Big River Steampunk Festival. We're a 20-minute drive, and it's fantastic. I really want to see about going to some of the St. Louis events. I know you've talked about them, and some of the other people have talked about them. And, we're a short drive from there, and that sounds like a lot of fun.
You know, you guys seemed interested in the seance. What I think would be fun, if you guys wanted to, you guys aren't too far from St. Louis. If you guys wanted to do a little podcast, maybe somewhere around Halloween regarding the seance, and if you guys wanted to sit in on one and maybe run the little thing, I'd let you tape what takes place in the seance.
Maybe more than happy.
100%. You can count us in for that.
Once we're all through, maybe we can make some plans. I think that would be a fun show.
That would be amazing.
Yeah,
yes, absolutely.
Excellent.
I do have one last question.
Yes.
Our special guest whispered in my ear twice. She would like to know if you ever have been or will try out for America's Got Talent.
AGT! So much good stuff on AGT. We have some friends who have done that. I don't know that that's really our cup of tea.
Right. We run into an issue there if our shows are 30 to 45 minutes long. And they're narrative driven. And that's not really the format of AGT.
Exactly
and I don't want to do something if I can't shine at it. If it's not going to be the best possible, I don't do them.
She asked me twice. I said I would.
Yeah.
I do like the show, and I really enjoy the people who are on there.
Yes.
I just don't think our format of entertainment fits their format.
Yeah.
And
that's okay.
Yeah.
That's all right. It's just a different kind of thing going on.
Well, I pretty like I can talk to you guys about that, or ask you 1,000 questions about that, which I really like.
Oh yeah, another person we could talk to all day if we could, but I know you guys have things to do, and we're taking up your time off. So those listening at home and us, how do we find out more about Judas and Magnolia?
Oh, fantastic. Visit judasandmagnolia.com or on Facebook, Judas like the Apostle and Magnolia like the tree. Find us on Facebook, judasandmagnolia.com. Find us on Tumblr, on Twitter, on Instagram, sort of all the important places.
Okay, great. There we go. And we'll have links to all of that in the description. All right.
Thank you, guys.
Good. Thank you so much for being on the cast.
Oh, yeah, our pleasure, our pleasure. If you guys like to do something in October, come over to St.
And we are back with the last interview, The Magic of Editing.
Hey!
Me and Daniel sat through all of that and listened to all of that. That was good.
Yes, and fast forward because it only took us like a minute.
No, we listened to all 4 hours.
Are we doing the veil thing again? It so did not work in the intro. So all the websites and social networking for every guest we had, we will post in the description on the YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, everywhere. We're just very, very happy that we took
more time than they promised us, as always, and they didn't complain.
Oh, absolutely not. We had the lie of, oh, this will only take 20 minutes or so, and we got all of them for at least 40. And a big thank you to everyone